Sword of Coming Chapter 892. Nothing happened overnight. There is Xiaoma who is watching the night. It is difficult to want a little thing. Just like before, Qin Pingan and Xiaomo traveled to Qingyuan County together, and they also worked as a dart master for a few days. The martial arts disciple who used the darts at that time had to worry about making an exception for drinking and whether he would be robbed by the gangsters. Up the dart. But in fact, at that time, in addition to a sword repairman in the ascending realm and a martial artist in the end, there was also a Zixuan Fengyuan Lingyan who was recognized that Yupa's killing power was comparable to that of immortals. Not to mention being placed in Qingyuan County, a small country was placed in any world. If someone hits the dart like this, it is no longer called a robbery dart. According to a saying in the Summer Palace, it is called courtesy and sentimental. Qin Pingan closed his eyes and condensed his breath, taking his mind as a mustard seed, cleaning up the broken mountains and rivers in the small world. Pei Qian stood on the edge of the cliff, standing with his fist shaking the mountain, like sleeping but not sleeping, warming his fist. The fish belly was white that day, and Qin Pingan suddenly proposed to go to the high places in the sky to watch the sea and watch the sunrise. Although he was down, Qin Pingan was still a real martial artist. Only Chao Qingqing, who was only a Dragon Gate monk for the time being, was not high enough for Yufeng's flying, so Xiao Mo grabbed his shoulders and took them to the Tongyi's house sky screen together. The sun rises above the sea and instantly rises to the sky, shining brightly, chasing the stars and driving away the waning moon, a continent from east to west. If the edict is issued, thousands of mountains are like fire. After seeing the scenery and returning to the top of the mountain, Qin Pingan raised his eyes and looked into the distance, and found something strange, auspicious, about 2,000 miles away from the top of the mountain. There is no small movement over there, a mountain top with colorful clouds condensed like a canopy. This is a sign that a place of mountains and rivers bred heaven and earth treasures. It is not a genus of immortal materials born in the sun from time to time, or a spiritual and beautiful land treasure bred by the luck of mountains and rivers. The lowest rank is also a magic treasure, otherwise it cannot be manifested. Kind of proof weather that is induced by heaven and earth. However, this kind of auspicious vision will not last long. After all, compared to the heavenly materials and earth treasures that have nurtured a little light and true spirit, they are not only an opportunity to prove the way, but such a leak of the secret will be even more of a calamity. After all, the distance was too far. With Qin Pingan's current realm, he couldn't use his supernatural powers to watch the mountains and rivers, so Xiao Mo had to do it for him. Xiao Mo glanced at the top of the mountain and said, "There is a dead ancient tree struck by lightning. There is a Ganoderma lucidum growing obliquely. Cover this secret, and within a few years of no accident, it can be successfully refined, but now it is more like protecting the Ganoderma lucidum that is about to resuscitate. There is a centipede on the side, which has been refined into a human form. With a black dress and a youthful face, it is probably a coveted spirit creature. It is leading a bunch of mountain monsters and ghosts. It is barely a formation, but it doesn't dare to get close to that little scorpion waiting for the opportunity. Not far away, 700 or 800 miles away, there is a Yin shrine on the mountain that doesn't seem to have been enshrined by the court. The miasma is relatively heavy. It should be the centipede that is self-appointed as a mountain god, and the mountain is king. There is also a group of armored soldiers stationed at the foot of the mountain, and there are 3 middle 5th level Qi practitioners inside. On a mountain road leading to the temple, there is a Taoist priest wearing a purple Taoist robe, who looks like a golden core monk. Farther away, the team of cars we encountered earlier clearly noticed the vision here, and the lady of the palace who used the book to pick the curtain is rushing to the temple of the gods and gods. Qin Pingan looked around and said, if it was Tongyi's Hao before, the movement here might have attracted as many immortals as his hands. Today is different from the past. Just pick up a Jindan Dixian who was not enough to see in his early years, and he is already regarded as a mountain hero in Tongyi's Hao. The new mountain lord of Dafu Academy, his real name is Cheng Longzhou, who was once the deputy head of Linlu Academy of Fayin Mountain in Dali, whose avenue roots and feet is a 10,000-year-old dragon in Huangting State. After taking office, he did something to make all the mountains and spirits north of Dafu Academy. Within 10 years, as long as they are native monks, they must take the initiative to post with the neighboring court, or report directly to the academy, write a clear pseudonym and practice. It is not allowed to travel long distances without authorization. This may seem unreasonable, but it is actually equivalent to a talisman issued by the Dafu Academy for a 10-year period. Because during this period, Neither the genealogy master on the mountain nor the gas trainer who has traveled to this place cannot provoke or apprehend this group of monster monks casually. The local monster monks who have been recorded by the Ministry of Rites and Dafu Academy of various countries will not be reduced to being indiscriminately killed or manslaughtered by the monks in exchange for credit. If there is a dispute, no matter how big or small, the scholars and sages of the Academy must go with other countries. The Ministry of Criminal Affairs will jointly try this matter and investigate it to the end. I am afraid that this is also the intentional arrangement of the Confucian Temple. Only Cheng Longzhou can be qualified as the head of one of the 72 Confucian academies, and he is still in charge of the Dafu Academy in the middle of Tonggishao. Xiaomo asked tentatively, "My son, the treasure in the mountain, not to mention the little Chiu that used the most stupid way to learn the true meaning of thunder, but only said that Ganoderma lucidum that intercepted thunder and struck the tree as a place to gain the truth, is it counted? The so-called heavenly things on Howran Mountain?" Qin Pingan said, "It's already half a master." Then Qin Pingan smiled, "But according to the general mountain rules, it's okay to really intervene. Before the treasure leaves the world, it's not a bad idea for outsiders to block the mountain rules. It's worth seeing. It's called the one who has the highest skill will win, but if the cultivator has already taken him off the ground, he will rob him and commit a taboo." Chao Qingqing said, "There will still be many genealogical monks traveling abroad, having similar opportunities, carrying heavy treasures and on the way back to the division gate. They have been cautious and cautious. When they finally approach the gate, they still die violently and lose both human and wealth. It is not without a line. There is no evidence to check, even those who have clues, are mostly deliberately planted by the mountains. In the end, the most suspected Shanzhua Yishio became more and more unwelcome. In board, it is clear that both sides are monks on the mountain, but they are in the same situation, so how can they be the same?" Qin Pingan said, "We can rush over and watch from a distance. A strong dragon can't beat a local snake. As for how to do it, let's see." Pei Qin explained, "Master, here belongs to the border of Daliang State. There is an old emperor who is old. He fled in his early years and was separated all the way. I heard that in the end he was only with 2 or 3 rebels. The root of the disease fell. After the restoration of the country, he could not heal for a long time and could not be cured for many years, so he let the prince supervise the country, and then I did not know where to find a Taoist priest, boasting that he could take the fairy bait alchemy pill, and he was proficient in prolonging life. Very long life, after several dynasties, mentioning the events 500 to 600 years ago, it is vivid and clear. There is also a female disciple with a beautiful face and a beautiful appearance by the Taoist priest, who claims to have a predestined relationship with the present sun, in order to repay the grace of the past. Long-cherished wish, that's why she asked her master to go down the mountain, assist and help Lianghua overcome the difficulties so that she can complete her merits and return to the immortal class. The Taoist priest of unknown origin was quickly honored by the Emperor Liang as a true person who protects the country. In a paper edict, the imperial court officials and local officials collected celestial grass from the 5 mountains and famous mountains, and made the immortal medicine eternal pill. Promoted, the common people can get rich. Last time I passed by here, the whole country was full of mountain-driving people. Some local officials either bought heavily with other countries or went to a Xinjia ferry to scan for goods. There was really no way out. I had to fake the 1,000-year-old Ganoderma lucidum for 10,000 years. I heard some rumors that the Prince of Lianghua, who supervised the country, was very at odds with this powerful guardian of the country. I was passing by this Liang country. I was worried that the pair of masters and disciples who had robbed the high position of the temple was a pair of wild monster monks who had not had time to escape from Tonggishao. So I went to the Taoist temple of Beijing and the imperial palace. I saw the woman and was born. It looks good, it can be called a beauty, but it's not like a bad guy. He complains and complains all the time. As for the true protector of the country who suddenly became noble, I think he is not high in realm, maybe he is a golden man on the mountain. It should be the purple-clothed Taoist that Mr. Xiaomo just mentioned. Although the whole country travels up and down the mountains to find medicine, it hurts the people and money, but the Taoist also did some practical things, gathered the corpses from all over the country, founded the righteous village, and then let the big and small Taoist temples open their doors and stop their spirits for people to help them return to their hometown. I have seen that. The attitude of the real person who protects the country is still not sure about the good and evil of the other party, so I didn't care about anything in the end, and continued to travel south and downstream. I planned to stop and watch for a few more days on the way home from the north, but later in the cloud. On the other side of the cave I met the master. Qin Pingan nodded in approval and said, "It is hardy and careful, very good. I am a big disciple of the mountain, a bit old-fashioned. Pei Qian grinned. Chao Sunny said suddenly, Sir, in fact, the master sister also took the time to write this Xianxia travels. I recorded Tangis' experience along the way and the content is detailed, but I don't know why, Lianggua's experience in the rivers and lakes, there is not a word in the book. Right. Pei Qian glared at him. Isn't she worried about this matter? If she is not doing it well, if she is known by the master, she will suffer from chestnut. In Qin Pingan's words, did you charge you money? Chao Qingqing smiled and said nothing. Pei Qian was furious, but she didn't show anything on her face, she just squinted at each other. Okay, when you Chao Mumuta ranks among the golden alchemists, don't blame yourself for being too light to compete in the same school. Seeing Pei Qian's long-lost golden character action, Chao Sunny was indeed a little bit embarrassed. But after all, it was not the white head of Taihui Jianzong, and Chao Sunny didn't even sweat on his forehead. Qin Pingan patted the proud student on the shoulder, scowled and said, It's not bad to make a complaint in person. Chao Sunny nodded, remember? What the husband meant was that he was not face-to-face. Xiao Mo smiled heartily. Pei Qian asked, Master, do we want to meet that purple-clothed Taoist priest? The true guardian who occupies the important temple of Daliang State, whether the other party is pretending to be a ghost, anyway, his master knows at first sight, at most a few words, it must be counted. Qin Pingan shook his head and smiled, no hurry. Let's take a look at how this true protector of the country dealt with the imperial empress. Don't worry, master will definitely protect the place where Xiaoqiu and Lingji depend on each other. And strive not to let outsiders disturb the subsequent enlightenment and refining of both sides. The world is also strange. Human beings are no longer human beings. The genus of spirits is closer. Pei Qian nodded. Follow the master to walk the rivers and lakes together, it is peace of mind. The mountains and rivers, looking at it will be a little sweet and affectionate. Master was not in the years when he was in his hometown and the world. Pei Qian has already traveled through Aquarius Island, North Julu Island, AI Island, Middle Earth God Island, Jinjia Island, South Pasu Island and Tongyi Island. Haranjiozhou, only Fuyazu and Luxiazu have never set foot. According to the old cook, even the little brother who had only been to Wuzhou mountains and rivers in her home was not as much as she wandered around. She was mostly alone. Before she knew it, she went from being a small black coal to a slim girl, and then into a young woman today. Many mountains and rivers are the same people. Traveling through mountains and rivers, in addition to the markets under the mountains, I have also seen many landscape gods, demons and weird roads. The gorgeous ghost in the water, lying half suspended in the water, seems to use the water surface as a mirror, dressing against the mirror with a blue silk swaying like water grass. In the isolated mountains and old forests, there are mandrills who are proficient in ancient seal symbols. They have been refined for thousands of years and are proficient in swordsmanship. They are swept down from the top of the mountain to the mountainside mansion. The figure and the sword light are like a white stone hanging between the blue cliffs. Seeing that the other party's face is not good, I feel that someone has broken into the house without permission, and I am in a bad mood. Pei Qian was just passing by, so he apologized with the mandrill-shaped white-clothed old man and planned to leave. It was just that the other party refused to give up and fight several times. The sword blocked the way, anyway no one was destined to know about this narrow encounter. Pei Qian rewarded the opponent with a set of crazy swordsmanship, and never thought that even if she suppressed the two realms she would still win the opponent. The two sides couldn't communicate with each other, but after the other party was defeated, they were not angry but rather happy, and their faces were full of surprises, and they looked very sincere and sturdy. It scratched its ears and scratched its cheeks, making random gestures with its hands and feet. It still couldn't make it clear. In the end, it offered the ancient sword in its hands with both hands, probably because it wanted the female sword fairy to teach this superior sword technique. As a reward it can be given away. That sword. It's just that Pei Qian ignored it and left directly Yufeng. That set of crazy swordsmanship was what she played with when she was a child. It has the face to learn but Pei Qian has no face to teach. In one temple, the 500 arhats in the Arhat Hall were all destroyed in the flames of war. The temple is just raising money to find skilled craftsmen to reshape the Luohan statue. The so-called golden body is actually to stick gold leaf. The pilgrims who became acquainted with each other can be recorded in the merit book, and they can also set up a monument to engrave their names. Pei Qian took out all the gold and silver on his body, but he used the name of the master. She also enshrines a lotus lamp, and then chooses a piece of red paper, presses it under the lamp, and writes on it the auspicious language that Pei Qian can match at a glance. And that day happened to be the 5th day of May of that year. Later, Pei Qian bit his head and confessed his sisters with a mountain woman. He saw a city who had the same amount of alcohol as Lao Wei. In the willow head of that month, a land prince and a river lady, it turned out that there was a fisherman sitting by the water and he thought that Pei Qian was an eyesore. There is a small country mountain monarch with a purple waist jade, patrolling the mountains and rivers, driving majestic and majestic. There are so many strange things. Pei Qian travels the world alone like this. He won't feel boring, but he won't find it much fun. Thinking about it, Pei Qian has only a simple impression. No way, that's it. Together Yu Feng went to the top of the mountain, and then Qin Pingan picked a secluded location not too far away, and let Xiaomo use his hand to watch the mountains and rivers while spreading out 3 landscape paintings. There was a Taoist priest in purple clothes with a crown of jade, walking slowly on the mountain road until he walked to the entrance of the Xianxia temple, carrying a stone picked from the roadside in his hand, the size of a fist. He walked to the empty temple, squatted at the door and placed the stone casually on the threshold. Pan Dao's method of victory with one hand, I have to say. The Taoist in Z looked at the ordinary stones standing on the spine of the mountain like peaks and ridges. He thought about it and typed all over the manuscript and finally came up with a more satisfactory wording. It's amazing. Then the true protector of the country with a golden crown was bored sitting on the steps outside the door, as if with the stone, waiting for the return of the temple owner. In the neighboring countries around Daliang, there are no Xinjia hills to speak of, and the mountain empress who escaped in the troubled times, if no accident, she will soon be promoted to a mountain king. No one argues it is really enviable. The ancients said that the immortal medicine, the eclosion of the service, the immortal. This is the most fascinating word. The mountains are lofty and the water is full, the wind is strong and people can walk through the iron shoes and the haze is endless. The clothes are wide and wide, thousands of mountains. If you are a Taoist obsessive but not comprehending, thousands of mountains and thousands of mountains higher and deeper, everywhere demons are born. Just want a rooster to announce the dawn, awaken the heavens and humans. There is still a word to the end. How can you rhyme and charm? The purple-clothed Taoist slapped his knee and said, the sunset clouds cover the moon, the stars are thin and the night is heavy, my golden alchemist, a golden elixir will come to the court, a little spiritual light will break through the mountains and rivers. I am not a god. Who is a god? The Taoist in Z was complacent, nodded to himself and smiled with his palms. Wonderful. I took out a small wine gourd from my sleeve. It was very small. It was estimated that it was like 3 or 4 taels of wine at most. After taking a sip, the Taoist in Z looked up and sighed. There are gods in 3 feet, and the poor do not believe that the day will rise to the blue sky. In the end, there was a long silence, and he raised the small hip flask in his hand high and muttered, back then, I immediately drank the monarch's wine in the mountains, but now I only see the blue sky and no one sees him. With a clatter, the purple-clothed Taoist slapped his head on the back, his head tilted, and his orifices bleed suddenly, and then he threw his body limp to the ground. That's it? On Qin Pingan's side, there was just a fast-moving car wheel. It seemed that he had received a decree from the palace's empress to change the route temporarily and head straight to Qin Pingan and his party. 2 maids lifted up the curtains and slowly walked out of the bamboo bed. An unusually tall woman, 1 foot and 3 feet tall. She was strangely tall, but she was whiter than snow. She was well-proportioned, and her body was thick and graceful. True. This mansion empress, with willow eyebrows and apricot eyes, her expression is cold, not anger or prestige. Xiao Mo thought of a book describing a beautiful woman, with light makeup and thin shirts and a fairy-like appearance. I saw that she was holding the rolled-up sheet music and came slowly, with a simple crystal birch hanging from her waist and a red braided knot. Only the new thing was old and the old thing was as new. She named the one behind her as a bamboo bed for a long journey on the ferry, and named it a place for planting flowers and reading. In addition to many books, there are many clear bottles hanging on the inner wall of the carriage, each with a flower. She was more than 10 feet away from Qin Pingan and the others and stopped to ask, are the immortals here to hunt for treasure? There is no such thing as treasure hunting. The monks in the mountains have always restrained their respect with the Tao, disregarding the light princes under the mountains. And as a mansion monarch and mountain god, she is regarded as a half-official, not to mention the fact that she drove out of the border of the country and landed in the border of this beam country. She was tantamount to leaving her own landscape and the realm of cultivation would be greatly reduced. Qin Pingan clasped his fist and said, we have just passed by since we have seen the princes and empresses. It is not a mountain who can build a mansion in addition to building temples, and he is not qualified to have that pomp when he goes out. Nowadays, the Jinhuang Mountain Divine Mansion and the Pine Needle Lake Water Monarch Mansion in the Daquan Dynasty are like this, similar to the Kaifeng of Jindan Dixian. As for Mui Shui Mansion after it was upgraded to Bio Palace, the golden and jade genealogy on the mountain will be even higher. As a water empress, there is no need to pay attention to the landscape taboo of mountain gods do not enter the water gods do not go up the mountain. She can even swagger away. The 5 sacred mountains of one country are a guest. Hearing from the other party that he was just passing by, of course the mountain goddess didn't believe it. Who was not touched by this rare opportunity in the fairy family? In fact, she doesn't know how to deal with this immortal master from a foreign country at the moment. If she can obtain the Daipo from the monk in front of her and Daliang Guo Woguo true person, take it to her own mountain palace, and then properly cultivate the one that has already opened up. The Ganoderma lucidum is mutually beneficial, and both parties have great benefits. If you hire the little Chiu who is about to succeed in refining, it is of course the best result, but now it seems to be hanging. Chen Pingan instantly noticed the strange aura at the entrance of the Shanshan shrine, a little curious and suspicious, and glanced at Xiao Mo next to him. Pei Qian did the same, but she turned her head to look at her master for the first time. From the corner of her eye, she glanced at Chao Sunny. This Chao Mu, what can be done? Heh, a Longmin realm great monk who can form a golden pill immediately, chanting as a wooden pestle. I just wanted to use a sword to save people, but the purple-clothed Taoist, intentionally or unconsciously, gave me a glance before being attacked. Xiao Mo immediately explained in his own heart, the one who attacked this person was a demon monk in the Jade Pure realm. It is undoubtedly from the wild world. Chen Pingan smiled and nodded and said, I borrowed a skin from a golden core monk so he can hide his identity, and then pick up the identity of a real protector of the country, completely change his face and be able to show his face. It's killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Pei Qian was a little confused and asked, Master, what about this vision? That monster monk, why didn't you shoot it earlier? There is also the real person who protects the country, letting the monster dove occupy the magpie's nest. What? Chen Pingan explained, the monster monk made a deliberate blindness. If it weren't for meeting the worldly expert in that Taoist door, it would really be nothing superfluous. Now the various forces in Tonggishao, led by the 3 academies, both openly and secretly, they are carefully searching the mountains to avoid fish slipping through the net. At least it is necessary to ensure that no one of the upper 5-level demon race hides in a certain place. Let's make an analogy, a mountain sword boats, flying swords fall on the earth like rain, people on the ground, if they can't beat the flying swords and then just avoid them, it's still very dangerous. Then the easiest and most effective way to protect yourself is to find a flying sword to smash the ground. Hide in the pit. Regardless of how the Xiaoqiu and Ganoderma lucidum on the mountain top will end up in the game, who will eventually fall into it, when the auspicious weather dissipates, the spiritual energy in the mountain is completely wiped out, and they will not be looked down upon as a gas trainer in the lower 5 realms. In the barren land of the Eye, it is destined that no one will pay attention to this mountain in the future. It can be seen that this Jade Innocence demon clan still took a little thought, but it was a pity that he encountered the Taoist priest in the Golden Core state, which was self-defeating. Nothing. If nothing else, the true guardian who is good at hiding clumsiness rushed to it from the beginning. The current Chen Pingan is afraid that the unidentified purple-clothed Taoist, the drunkard's intention is not to drink, and Wu Shuangjiang was on a night boat at the beginning. A fortune teller, relying on the evolution of the hexagram and the road deduction, has long been there and waited for the rabbit. After that, I just waited for myself to pass by here, and then went to the mountains to mind my business. It's just that Chen Pingan couldn't communicate with one of the joints. If you really want to calculate yourself, why remind Xiao Mo in advance with his eyes? Even if the other party sees that Xiao Mo is not easy to provoke, he changes his mind and prepares the well water for the time being to avoid the river. You can go down the mountain and retreat. Otherwise, you can find a way to scare away the upper-level monster monk who is waiting for an opportunity. It's safer to play dead than it is now. The air ripples at the entrance of the mountain temple in the distance were fleeting, and the mansion lady didn't even notice the slightest. Xiao Mo felt a little guilty. It was his own mistake to fail to see through the realm of the purple-clothed Taoist. Chen Pingan smiled and comforted, "Don't blame yourself, there are too many weird people, we are not bad about this. There are some accidents, if you can't hide, then soldiers will come to cover the water." Xiao Mo nodded. "In fact, what comforts people's hearts more than words is the instinctive look of my son. When things happen suddenly, it is not shock, complaint, or questioning but curiosity, trust, and peace of mind. Chen Pingan frowned slightly, hesitated for a moment and quickly said with a smile. Since the host of Liang Nation has opened the door to welcome guests, we seem to have no reason to get in. Let's go and see. At the entrance of the temple, a crooked old man squinted his eyes and looked at the corpse on the ground. After confirming that there was nothing wrong, he smiled in a slightly lame Tongyi's Hao Yayan. Good fellow, I just spoke with a louder tone. Great, I almost didn't scare me to death. Fortunately, I can deduct Dao Shu and do some calculations temporarily. After walking around the corpse, the old man nodded frequently and said, I have a good skin, and it is worthwhile for me to take risks. In this way, I can finally go to the mountains and enjoy a happy life without being nestled here. The old man finally made up his mind, pinched the tactics, his body shape turned into a mist of blue smoke, penetrated into the 7 orifices of the purple-clothed Taoist priest. Suddenly, the figure of the old man was not seen. The purple-clothed Taoist straightened his body, instantly stood up, his movements were stiff, and slowly twisted. He raised his hands again, shook the sleeves of the 2 Taoist robe, a pair of eyes turned to pitch black, but soon returned to normal, moistened his throat. Learned that Taoist priest became a chief inspector, haha laughed, poor and polite now, fushing immeasurable Tianzuan. Then the purple-clothed Taoist priest had a distorted face as if he was very painful and said to himself, Pan Dao is neither a Baiyujing Taoist nor a Sandong disciple. It is not appropriate to say this sentence according to the method of Taoism and the rules of the mountain. Of course, the poor way is the main and you are the guest, the main is the guest and you are happy. A body skin is like a jail. Facing the 7 apertures, the wisps of smoke from the soul of the monster monk were not allowed to get out of the hole. After a while, the green smoke disappeared and the purple-clothed Taoist screamed and said, There is a small accident. With a mysterious natal creature, the realm of Yupu, there is the killing power of an immortal. Poor Dao is really? Dao is not low, quite not. It's low. Seeing the group of 4 people falling in front of him, the Taoist priest in Zi looked at Pei Qian and said with a smile, Those easy tricks in the poor way are not ultimate methods, but if they are used well and expediently, they can also benefit all living beings. A Taoist who became a true protector of the country, but he spoke Buddhist language. The eccentric Taoist priest squinted his eyes and said, If you don't go shopping, the newly acquired disciple of the Poor Road, and the Emperor of Liang, do have a predestined relationship that needs to be kind. Of course, Miss Zheng. I have already met her. Ms. Zheng, at a young age, she fought fiercely on the battlefield of Jianghu. Peng Dao has long heard of it and I admire it. As for asking Chao Ci for 4 rounds of boxing, it is even more famous. If you want to know, Peng Dao is even more famous. Covering your ears with your hands will not work. Pei Qian said nothing. It seems that he finally found the man in the green shirt. The purple-clothed Taoist priest looked and looked again, and then he suddenly said, This realm rises and falls. The earth fairy sword immortal, is it the thunderous Luopishan Lord Qin Shanju? It is our Zheng the girl's master? Chen Pingan did not hold his fists, hesitate, let alone condemn him. He just looked as usual and said with a smile, Senior summoned him, I dare not come. It must be a worldly expert. It's just that no matter how Chen Pingan guesses, no matter how whimsical he is, he can't guess the identity of this person. The purple-clothed Taoist priest seemed to see through Chen Pingan's mind, and waved his hand. A real person does not show his face and his appearance is not a real person. The real worldly expert must be someone you don't know before, and it may be the rolling maid next to the palace lady. It may be some armored soldier at the foot of the mountain in the distance. Anyway, poor Dao alone is definitely not a real master. Qin Shanju looks at too much, poor Dao can't bear it. Chen Pingan smiled and did not speak, as if he was a junior listening to the teachings of the predecessor on the top of the mountain. The purple-clothed Taoist sighed, as expected to be the lord of a sect, good temper, as expected to have seen big scenes in a foreign land, good concentration. Poor Dao has long been said, fate is not as hard as fate, no matter how good it is, after all, it can't be forever. Good, but life is hard, but I can always climb high without stopping, occasionally telling the pace of the pace. It is said that people have the ambition to skyrocket, the mind is tenacious, but if there is no luck, they are still incapable of self-control. Then this point fortunately, I don't know what kind of unique opinion Qin Shanju, who is a closed disciple of Wensheng's line, would have? Chen Pingan replied, The blessings that come from the heavens must first open their wisdom. The most inconspicuous and the most important. The purple-clothed Taoist's eyes lit up and he stroked his palms and smiled. Some nonsense limericks are written in a single stroke, regardless of the meaning and refinement of the words, but the beauty is also excellent. After coughing a few times, the Taoist priest in Zi brewed some words and said, Pan Dao is a straight character and he never speaks in a roundabout way. There are two nonsense words that I hope will not become a prophecy. I don't know if I should say it? Qin Pingan smiled and said, Senior has the final say. On the way here, Qin Pingan took out a trekking stick from a nearby object. The Taoist and Z glanced at the green bamboo stick in Qin Pingan's hand. When you don't cut it, you will suffer from chaos. If you don't drop it, you will suffer from it. Qin Pingan clenched the hiking stick in his hand, nodded and said, Teached. After Xiao Mo appeared, he kept smiling. Xiao Mo slowly put away his smile on his face until he heard these few words that he felt were well-deserved nonsense. The chicken-ribbed flying sword that had been stripped out was previously named Xuanhuan by his own son. Xiao Mo begged twice again, begging Qin Pingan help to name the remaining 3 natal flying swords. Therefore the one that Xiao Mo loves the most, can drag an ancient star to the ground, and was named Lotus Root by the sun, which means that the root of the lotus is broken. The flying sword that can imitate the magical powers of others is named True. The last one that can detain the spirits of the monks is called Drunk Country. Very good, maybe today you can have a good fight with the great monk on the top of the mountain. As for the other party's surname and name, whether it was a person in the Taoist school where it came from, and which ancestor of the sect, later he just let go of his hands and feet and asked the sword. Just ask. Do not. The Taoist in Z waved his hand vigorously and said solemnly, Pan Dao is a lazy person who doesn't seek improvement. It is not worthy of this senior and Qin Shanzhu to ask the sword together. It is unnecessary to destroy thousands of mountains and rivers. He wasn't surprised that the guy in the yellow hat and blue shirt was so high and murderous. On the contrary, it was the young sword repairers, holding a staff like a sword, which surprised him quite a bit. I almost mistakenly thought that I was dazzled. Actually, the last hidden official of the Great Wall of Sword Qi did not fall, but broke? It seems not. Fortunately not. Otherwise, the hidden officer of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and his accomplishments in swordsmanship, will inevitably be disappointed. The purple-clothed Taoist priest began to talk about it, as if seeing the situation is not good, he turned to the usual routine. My generation of monks who are away from home, want to live for a long time and get together. Being kind to others is the first priority. Blindly fights and kills. It hurts the sky and does not say. It is not forgiving, that is, not forgiving and for nothing. Sunshine Avenue becomes a single plank bridge, why bother to come? The location of Qin Shanzhu's next clan is now settled. Can the next clan have a name? If it doesn't exist for the time being, Pang Dao can help. I don't want to conceal each other, the matter of naming the poor Dao is still a little knowledgeable, and it is much higher than this body Dao Fa. Qin Pingan was very patient and listened to the chatter of this mountain senior. It's just that the palm of the hand is pressed against the hiking stick, and the other is clenched in the abdomen. The purple-clothed Taoist suddenly asked a digressive question. I don't know what Master Qin Shan thinks about the behavior of the female practitioner in Yezigang? Qin Pingan said, the chief culprit in the destruction of Shermen in his own sect in his hometown of Tonggishao, and in the world of Haoran, are all serious faults. Then? There will be no more then or but, right? The purple-clothed Taoist asked with a smile. The proud disciples who are taught by old scholars and carefully taught cannot have the following, are they? Qin Pingan originally hesitated to speak but stopped, but finally remained silent. The Taoist priest in purple shook his head and waved, go down the mountain. Upon. It's a pity that the previous fortunate. The old scholar took such a close disciple. The eldest sword immortal of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, let this person be the hidden official? Why don't you just keep the worrying seedlings? What's the matter, Qin Qing? You are all photographed by the existence behind this young man. When did Qin Qingdu and Jinshi Great Wall both need to be like this? Taoist and Z must be worried, and if he looks at the young man more, he can't help but ask Jian first. Sitting back on the steps, Taoist Z took out the small wine gourd again, took a sip and said, Qin Pingan, you don't have to think about it. The person I'm waiting for here is not you but a friend of yours. It's just that. You are lucky to make friends, the other person, his vision of making friends, can only be regarded as average. Qin Pingan turned his head and asked, are you waiting for Zhang Shanfeng? The Taoist in Z laughed and said, is he a wise man after all? Then? On my own side there is nothing left. Qin Pingan turned around, put the trekking stick away and put it in a nearby place, making a salute. The younger generation has seen Tianshi Liang. Longhushan Tianshi Mansion Huang Zigui, all surnamed Zhao. Since ancient times, there is only one exception, and that is the great celestial master of Longhushan, such as the previous real person, the fire dragon on the ground. The Taoist priest in purple was expressionless, turning a deaf ear. This old true man who has returned to the basics and has a good face can only sigh. This time he went out of the mountain from beginning to end. It was extremely boring, and today is no exception. The old man shook his head. Poor embroidered tiger, sad Qi Jingchun. Unfortunately Wenxing is in the same line. The purple-clothed Taoist glanced at the ground, stomped gently, sighed, and had to squint his temper and said to the young man, "Operate the next sect well, don't say anything for your Wenxing lineage, let alone talk about it. If the world is alive, it's good for yourself." Qin Pingan turned his back to the great celestial master from Longhushan who only knew his surname Liang, nodded, and continued down the mountain. Xiaomo's face was pale. Chao Sunny and the senior Shizhu gently shook their heads, indicating that it was all right. In fact, the old man sitting on the steps originally wanted to ask. He would ask Qin Pingan, "How do you think of this Tong Yezhou?" But the premise is that the other party answers the first question. After a battle is fought, even though he has won, the price of the awe-inspiring world is not unrelenting. It is equivalent to half of the country of 4.5 continents. It is in shattered and horrible conditions. But Fuyazu, the backbone of the defeat, is straight, even if it is Jinjiazu, even if there is a great ascendant monk Wanyan Laojing who betrayed Haoran, his reputation on the mountain is as good. There is also Qinchunan in Nanpasuzhou, and the mountains and rivers of the continent, especially the coastal front, are actually not bad. Only this Tongya Island, up and down the mountain, seems to be extremely humane. Fortunately, the land of a continent has never been completely drowned, but there is no one in the house. The mountains and rivers and the land are like a wild ghost sitting in the homeland at night, and it is even more lonely. The old real man rubbed his chin, looked at the back of the green shirt slowly descending the mountain, then glanced at the sky and remembered something. "Why don't you retrieve the head of the great ancestor Tueshen?" Qin Pingan replied with his heartfelt voice. "He is Jian Xiu." The old real man yelled and asked with a smile, "It's a good pavement, wonderful, is it just to deal with similar problems? This kind of fame and reputation is really amazing. The young people nowadays are really amazing. Or is it that old scholars can teach you? It is good?" Qin Pingan turned his head and said, "As a junior, I would like to remind seniors at the end that it's almost enough." The old real man tweeted, "Hey, he was still a young man with a little temper. Why, he finally stopped being that hypocrite. Isn't it a silly thing? Or is it a foresight, and I have begun to worry that I will spread words around saying that you are a scholar. The city mansion is very serious, and when I saw a great celestial master from Longhushan, he didn't dare to say anything about it? So I have to make a temporary remedy and take the opportunity to pretend to be with me? Step by step, sentence by sentence." Qin Pingan turned around, looked at the old man, and said to Pei Qian and Chao Qingqing, "You immediately leave with the wind, the farther the better." Pei Qian hesitated. Chao Sunny said, "Pei Qian, go away." Pei Qian remembered the master's question boxing on the second floor of the bamboo building before, and she no longer hesitated. The old man smiled and stood up, stretched his waist and stretched his muscles and bones. Then he would have a good grasp of the 3 natal flying swords of the peak sword repair of the Ascension realm, as well as the level of swordsmanship of a last hidden official and the weight of the fist of the end swordsman. It's not the first time that you can run away if you can't beat it, anyway. Xiao Mo whispered to the old real man with his own heartfelt words, "Say in advance, will I be the winner or the life and death?" This time Xiao Mo didn't say hello to his son, so he didn't plan to discuss the matter. It's just that the old man in front of him seems to have suffered a serious injury, and his heart is not complete. As long as it really fights, Xiao Mo will never let his son get involved. He had to do what he had promised the swordsmanship evangelist and Mr. Wenxing. At this moment, a young man in white clothes who came here in a hurry, bent over and gasped, stood on the roof of the mountain temple and said angrily, "The surname Liang, are you crazy? Your trip to Tongya Zhouji, okay? If I couldn't beat that so or so, I cast my anger on my husband?" The old man turned his head and looked at the hurried Cui Dongshan. It didn't make sense. He had already covered the secrets in advance and shouldn't be blocked by this bastard. Qin Pingan was stunned when he heard the words. Cui Dongshan was very angry. "Do you still need to ask the answer? Whenever you old guy speaks, my husband will be silent." It turned out that in the early years, this old man of very high generation and age had neither established a sect, nor had he taken up his followers to open up branches and leaves. He lived alone in the mountains for thousands of years, until his heart felt instinctive. I was very quiet and thoughtful and started going down the mountain. In addition to the incense sentiment many years ago, I was invited to serve as the great celestial master of Longhushan. and the child of Zhao Tianlai was worried about the young man named Zhang Shanfeng. People, because of the hereditary renunciation of the title of Celestial Master of the foreign surname, which will promote the cultivation, which is not conducive to the practice of the young people, they will decline the suggestion of the fire dragon real person. Moreover, in that troubled world, Longhushan really needed a foreigner who was more able to fight and could use it as soon as possible. No matter what, if you cannibalize people and take shorthands, you have to bite the bullet and swim here and plan early. The result, it's not very good, it's just nothing, it's so embarrassing, it's just hiding here and dare not return to the Middle-earth divine continent, especially Longhu Mountain. Of course, he really needs to heal his injuries, so much so. In the last 100 years, I have to admit my fate and Yijing should not move. He used to be a close friend of a celestial master of Longhushan, and both parties used to travel far beyond the sky with the saint of ceremony. It's just that when they went there, the two went together and fought side by side, and never thought that there was only one person left on the way home. Those who are depressed have nothing but goodbye. It's ridiculous to say that this time I came back to Tongi's house to lurch, and he failed to assassinate someone, and failed to make him fall 1.5 levels. He was also seriously injured and completely deprived of the idea of entering the 14th level, so I had to stay. After several years of training in Tongi's house, he will return to his hometown. The person who was assassinated by the great celestial master outside Longhushan was exactly the one high and thorough in the wild world. The old Real man turned his head and asked, "The answer is?" Qin Pingan said, "It's human nature." "Yes." The old real person sighed, then repeated the two words in a deep voice, "Yes." The compassionate heart of the female ancestor of Yezigang who made a big mistake at a certain moment cannot be completely ignored. This is not to say that this humanity can make up for mistakes, of course, it is far from making up, and even needs to be used by future generations to constantly alert themselves to similar situations, do not repeat the same mistakes, but the only problem is that outsiders, bystanders, if you ignore that the brilliance of people's hearts for a moment, for any mountain monk who is expected to climb to the top, or even ascend to the sky, may also be a catastrophe in the future. Otherwise, the old man really wouldn't be so, making things difficult for an old scholar's closed disciple. If it's not pleasing to the eye in general, just ignore it. In the final analysis, I am afraid of that in case. For example, as Zhou Zi worried, a 15-level sword repairman appeared in the world. What if this person is already inhuman? Just in case even this person still doesn't know it? Lao Jin's popularity changed completely and he asked seriously again, "Qin Pingan, that poor Dao has to rely on the old to sell the old," knowingly asked, "What do you think of the Tongi's how under your feet?" Without any hesitation, Qin Pingan replied, "Indus is really unwilling to fail, and there is still a sound when counting leaves in front of the wind." The old man was stunned for a long time and finally suffocated. "I thought about it with the poor Dao. The content is exactly the same but it's not bad." Cui Dongshan sat on the roof, patted himself on the cheek and smiled angrily. "The surname is Liang, let me ask you a simpler question, what is this thing called?" Qin Pingan stared, "How did you talk to seniors?" Cui Dongshan immediately jumped off the roof and rubbed his shoulders for the old man on tiptoe. "Tianshi Liang, we might as well take advantage of Zhao Tianlai's not in Longhushan. Say." The old man was taken aback. "You bastard, don't talk nonsense." The old man beckoned again. "Qin Shanju, come here, pull up brother Cui and have a drink together. Poor Dao has to pay you a guilty and then suppress the shock." Qin Pingan asked Xiao Mo to call Pei Qian and Xiao Qingqing back, and then walked to the door and sat on the steps with the old man. Xiao Mo and Cui Dongshan sat aside. The old man shook the wine gourd vigorously and put it in his sleeve, but unfortunately there was no wine. Qin Pingan had to pass a pot of wine. The old man reduced his smile and sighed for some reason, feeling a little sad. He thought about those old friends who had become ancient people again. He drank a sip of wine, wiped his mouth, looked into the distance and whispered, "On the way of life. The more hope you give and you don't want to let them down, the harder this person will be." Qin Pingan turned sideways, lifted the hip flask in his hand, and said something that surprised the old man again. The old man was speechless and had to drink obediently. The old man thought it would be an answer similar to "you can have fun in hardship," but the young man next to him said, "You can drink with a real person." Sword of Coming Chapter 893. The capital of Liang State is shining brightly in winter. A brand new Taoist temple built by the emperor. If visitors walk into it, they will definitely mistake it for a 1,000-year-old Taoist temple. This is an antique fragrance piled up by the national treasury with nearly 1 million taels of real gold and silver. The sun fell on the turquoise glazed tiles on the roof of a palace, and there was a row of lifelike ridge beasts on the ridge. Among them, the statues of sacred lions resembling lions seemed to shake their heads. Just a few steps away, day and night are different. The roof is daylight, but under the eaves is the darkness. In the dimness, there are women's handheld palace lanterns. In the slow corridor, the slender hands are as white as moonlight. She was parading back and forth in the corridor with a lantern, passing by 2 vermilion gates every time. Inside the room, a young man in white with a red mole on his eyebrows seemed to hang high in the sky, looking at an old Taoist from a distance, xuanhuan, a great celestial master of Longhushan. And at this moment, at the entrance of the mountain shrine on the border of Liang Kingdom, the true guardian was actually still chatting with Chen Pingan and chatting quite well. There was also a boy in white sitting beside the steps just over there. There was an extra xiaoma with a yellow hat and blue shoes. In fact, the old real person in front of him is the real body of Longhushan Tianshi Liangshuang. Cui Dongshan sighed, and a battle was fought. Except for the Beta Shengzheng Juzhong, it seemed that it was not easy for anyone. For example, in front of this old Taoist, there appeared a kind of withered look that can be seen by ordinary masters. His hair is sparse and he barely wears a golden crown in his bun. The old man is as thin as wood, so that the originally large purple robe on his body is even more loose. Liang Shuang put his hands on his abdomen, his 2 thumbs pressed against each other. He was breathing out, using them to stabilize his mind and nourish his rotten flesh. Behind the old real man, there is still a vague golden figure, but it is like a hanging statue swaying in the wind. The 3 body shapes differ greatly in size. Cui Dongshan is as small as a mustard seed, a real person is as big as a mountain, and the law is as majestic as a star. It was actually the first time Cui Dongshan saw the old man with his own eyes. Although the old real man seems to be drowsy, every time he breathes and breathes, the 7 orifices on his face are full of vitality like a waterfall, like white snakes hanging on the wall, and occasionally, the air flows out and turns into a purple text, as if he is copying a scripture. Every time it is connected to form a sentence, it returns to the 7 orifices, like rivers that have already rushed into the sea, being led back by the immortals again. Although the string of purple words retreated when they were in a sentence, they still left indelible traces of the treasure urn in the vast void in front of the old man. The brilliance was dim and the handwriting was dull. Cui Dongshan looked at it as if reading a book under the moon. Tianxian sits in meditation to produce Dao Qi, and the virtual room writes to turn the spring breeze. If it were not for serious injuries, this great celestial master of the foreign surname did not need to retreat here, painting the ground as a prison, and could only travel far away with the Yinshen. Cui Dongshan was so heartless seeing this scene with his own eyes, and it was a bit sentimental. The real person Liang Shuang, the road number is Tai. Looking back at that year, how wonderful the sky was and the spirit of the wind was chic. There is a famous beautiful man on the mountain. It's just that Liang Shuang, who replaced the celestial master of the fire dragon on the ground, is almost the most proud of the world. He likes mountain people to live in secluded areas, and he really has to talk about generations. Liang Shuang is taller and longer than the age of Dao. Just after entering the Ascendant Realm, the old Jinren spent thousands of years behind closed doors and thanking guests. In addition, Liang Shuang's practice path was so few that he made so few shots that over time, Haoren did not know that there was such a mountain top. Character. Cui Yang visited Liang Shuang when he was young and traveled abroad with an old scholar, but he ended up taking a ruthless close-up, which made the old scholar still stubborn. It's fine if people haven't seen it and the wine hasn't been drunk. Outrageous, too shameless. The old real man still closed his eyes and rested his mind, but noticed Cui Dongshan's ups and downs and said calmly, "Each has his destiny, life is obedient, why bother to be sad?" Then the old man smiled. Before there was a little doubt, now it seems that it is indeed not the old embroidered tiger Cui Yang. Cui Dongshan sat cross-legged in this old real man's little world of thoughts and asked, "Is there any trivial things that juniors can help?" As for Liang Shuang's mending the avenue at the moment, it is avoided. Cui Dongshan admits that he doesn't have the ability to master the sky. The old man seemed to have transcribed a scripture, and Dao Xn became more and more unwavering. He opened his eyes and said, "Nothing." There was a dialogue between the two sides here, and there was also a small chat at the entrance of the mountain shrine. The purple-clothed Taoist and Qin Pingan mentioned the assassination of the year. There was no arrogance at all, but it was regarded as a shame. Compared with the real body in front of him, Liang Shuang, the protector of the country over the temple, seems to condense all the 7 emotions and 6 desires of the real body, as well as happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "A cultivator who has entered the 14th realm at most in Tonggishao, which is already a barren land, injured a 14th level peak monk. He escaped with his hands. If this is not a feat, how can it be considered a feat?" So the junior is very curious, how did the senior do it? Liang Shuang said indifferently, "It's all about doing everything to do with the destiny." Before ascending to the sky, Xuanhuan was the first person besides the well-deserved patriarch of the three religions. This savage Xuanhuan, known as Tong Tian Laohu, still has an outstanding character creation skill in a foreign land. Just like Li Zhen once asked Zhou Mi face to face, how many big monsters he had joined in the past thousands of years. It seems that the meticulous method of harmony is to eat all the time and never eat enough. Just the wild 14-old throne big demon, in the Great Wall of Jianghu, the owner of the Lotus Nunnery was beheaded by Dong Sangying, and xuanhuan, who was beaten as Yuaning by a Liang and Yao Chongdao, was in Tonggishao near the Daoxian mountain site, and Yaojia, who was beheaded by Yi Cheyun. In addition, Zhou Mi had already stripped off a Yang god's outer body, rising step by step, and finally became the great demon Bang, who was above the throne of withered bone. What's more, before that, Zhou Mi had long used the barren world to kill and then eat Lu Fian, who was also the 14th realm, that is, the masters of Qiyun and Firen, and finally the Yin god merged with it. As for Jin Jiaz's rebellious ascendant monk Wanyan Laojing, it is estimated that it can only be regarded as a small appetizer. In addition, God knows how many wild monsters other than the old throne have combined in a thorough secret? Cui Dongshan shook his sleeves, put his fingers together and shook it gently, revealing his seal. Liang Shuang glanced at him. "What a hungry old bookworm. I have accumulated 3 million books by hand, and I am entertained by the cold weather." He feasted on the word for immortals in the year, and he was a silverfish in this life. It was a private book seal of ordinary material. It is said to be heroicjourney. He picked up a piece of jade from the mountain on the roadside of the world in his hometown on the way to the upside-down mountain. It was carved into a chapter and used as a book seal to carry with him for many years. Liang Shuang sighed, "The great world, all things are beautiful. It includes all kinds of things and it is a single image." How powerful Zhou Mi is, if he hasn't played it personally, it will be difficult for outsiders to imagine what would happen. In particular, don't forget one thing: when Zhou Mi was a scholar of Haoran, he used to ascend to the sky directly from the Lujin realm to the Yupu realm. The reason for this weak scholar to practice Taoism in the past was actually just to be able to read more books in his life, in order to display his ambitions. The closed disciple who was left by Zhou Mi in the world today, Jiashen's wooden clogs, and later Zhou Qinggao, took the same shortcut. Liang Shuang actually has some curiosity. "Back then, I heard about some of your things from Tianlai before I went down the mountain. For example, one of the incidents was Cui Yun, who became a master of the country of Dali, because he was the first disciple to publish articles. In the context, the Central Tube Confucian Temple forbids the knowledge of the literary sage, and you have been involved a lot, so you have fallen from the immortal state off course. The matter of falling into the state, is it a blinding method? The seniority is not high, and the age is not too old. You only need to call the contemporary celestial master of Longhushan as Tianlai, from Liang Shuang. It's a matter of course in the eyes of ordinary people, but it is inexplicable in the eyes of old Jinren and Zhao Tianlai. The reason is very simple. Haoran stands high on the top of the mountain, but dare not underestimate the mind of Xiuhu. After all, he is a literary saint who can regard the vice master of the Confucian temple as his possession as long as he wants. As a result, no one thought that such a scholar who could have been named in history would become a bereavement dog and a rat crossing the street. The former refers to the loss of cultural identity, the latter refers to the situation of embroidering tigers, deceiving the teacher and destroying the ancestors and rebelling against the classics. In the Middle-earth Shenzhou, anyone can step on a few feet. There are few friends, and it seems that there is only Lu Jubao from Iazhao. Yu Panshui of the Xianmi dynasty and the Shanhai sect still sympathizes with Xiuhu. Yes or not? Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "The fall is true, but I still want to deceive myself and others so as to lie to others. I also came to understand this matter very later, and I was kept in the dark by Cui Yang for many years because of this bastard. In order to deceive the world, the first person to deceive is the other self, Cui Dongshan." Speaking of this, Cui Dongshan began to curse. "When I thought that I was so stupid back then, I went to Lizhu Cave to fight with Qi Jingchun and brave his wrists. Now Cui Dongshan could not wait to dig a hole and drill down. At that time, Qi Jingchun looked at the self-confident and self-confident self who was holding the winning ticket. Isn't it like watching a big joke? It's a hard job to hold back a smile, right? Liang Shuang raised his hand, calculated mentally, supplemented with a pinch and finally sighed, "Embroidering tiger is ruthless." Cui Yang did the same to himself and to the younger junior brother who was later on. This way of protecting the way, the only one. Cui Yang is like. As long as Qin Pingan falls into the hands of my big brother, he can work hard to maintain his Dao Xian, and he won't collapse completely. If he doesn't lose his mind, then there will be no outsiders in the world who can calculate Qin Ping's Dao Xian. Cui Yang's fall was true, but he did it deliberately. The most illuminating way to obscure the top of the mountain is to cover the truth with the truth, not to cover it. As the first Taoist book in the world, it was called the head of the group scriptures by the later world deities. This book has already revealed the secrets of heaven. The main road is 50, and the sky is 4 or 9. Embroidered tiger Cui Yang stripped the soul and divided into two, making Cui Dongshan appear out of thin air. To be precise, it is a veritable young Cui Yang. The key is that embroidered tiger. In this matter, it did not make the best use of its own knowledge, did not pursue the result of two Cui Yang and two soaring, but intentionally or unconsciously, deliberately limited Cui Dongshan's chess power. So the latter, apart from the lack of memory, is actually inferior to Cui Yang in terms of temperament and mentality, as if it has a distinct priority. Liang Shuang asked. To accomplish this, Cui Yang consulted Mr. Sanshan Jiuho about the method of sealing the mountain? Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "It is not only to ask for advice, but also to discuss. This is also the respect to the seniors who have been smitten by the years and eyes. If you change to a bastard, you can't directly put on the sentence, 'It's nothing to ask for advice, it's just mutual indulgence.' If you are still not happy, add another sentence, 'Why are today's people inferior to the ancients?'" The old man said, "Wait a moment." Cui Dongshan nodded, "The juniors just wait. The old true person uses the Taoist mind to control the Taoist mind, and then uses the Taoist mind to draw the Taoist energy, and finally uses the Taoist energy to control the majestic and violent aura of the river, running a big week in the small world of the human body, and Liang Shuang withdraws from it." After Fang Xingxiangxiandi, the two of them were placed in a simple and elegant house, only 2 futons, a small table and a basan smoker, surrounded by purple smoke, full of fragrance in the room. There was a rare smile on the old real man's face. "You gentlemen, you are careful enough as if you have begun to doubt whether you are in a dream." The words of his own Yin God before were actually tantamount to questioning the sword with Chen Pingyan. The real body of Liang Shuang here takes the opportunity to see people's hearts with heavenly hearts. Such as the deceased in the world are very few. Zhou Zi is one of them. Cui Dongshan raised a palm and shook it 3 times as a fan, pulling the purple and gold smoke, which is more precious than the temple incense, towards him a little bit. No more no less, just 3 hits. Indispensable, the elders dare not give up, and if they are too many they are also inappropriate. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "It is a hero who can stand the test of heaven. The most difficult thing is eternal innocence." Liang Shuang was noncommittal and asked, "I have to do it as a last resort, what about you?" The Yinshan travels far away from the body is not sustainable, but the world has no absolutes, and there are many other ways in the mountains such as the 3 corpses of the Taoist sect, and the surrendered heart. Cui Dongshan did not conceal, "I separated a part of the mind, attached to the porcelain, and sneaked into the colorful world. I originally planned to spend a good time there to help Luopishan establish the next sect. The means are more scheming but the secrets are shallow." Liang Shuang frowned and said, "So toss and cast a net everywhere, do you think you want that ascension realm?" Cui Dongshan said, "With the exception of my husband, Luopa Mountain does not lack the realm of anyone. But we lack the territory, the manpower, and the money. Now that Luopa Shangguang is a ascended realm cultivator, there are 2 Xiaomo and Wu Shuangjiang's inner demon Taoist." Liang Shuang nodded and said, "Weiran is a big deal." Cui Dongshan smiled brightly, raised his hand, clasped his fist, and shook it vigorously. "It must be an auspicious word." Liang Shuang smiled and said, "You gentlemen, you have fallen from Yupu to Jindan, and now it's hard for a little clever woman to cook without rice. Sora has a messy but still good Taoism, but he has been saved by his spiritual energy. It's no wonder that we can't get acquainted with I, because it turns out that we have the same disease and pity each other." Cui Dongshan was worried. Qin Pingan was the first boxer to practice and became a pure martial artist. After becoming a chi trainer, there are 2 junior 1 and 15th that can never be practiced, plus the talisman method, and it is more than enough to fight against others. Later, at the Great Wall of Sword Chi, he became a genuine sword repairman, possessing 2 extremely unreasonable natal flying swords, so you don't need to be too constrained by the amount of spiritual energy, and then join the half of the Great Wall of Sword Qi as well as with Lu Qin. Temporarily borrow a body of 14 realms of Taoism. Therefore, Qin Pingan has never experienced the kind of spiritual exhaustion, fighting on the mountain all the way. Otherwise, fighting on the mountain or practicing in retreat, renovating the mountains and rivers, it is common for monks to exhaust themselves passively or actively. There is a metaphor on the mountain. The amount of spiritual energy and wealth of the monks in the lower 5 realms is the difference between one or a few snowflakes. Entering the middle 5 realms, especially the Jiejin Dan, is equivalent to sitting on a small summer money. After breaking the bottleneck of the nascent soul and entering the 5 realms, a monk's spiritual aura family status can be measured by Guyuqian. Liang Shuang asked, "Are you planning to start from scratch in Tonggishao and Xianxia separately?" Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "Hope. I'm a little curious, how did you raise your heart? For a cultivator, it's easier to refresh your mind, it's hard to make up for it, and it's hard to get up." Cui Dongshan was a little bit anxious. "At the door of my house, I was irritated by the surname Zheng." Liang Shuang nodded and said, "Zheng Zheshong's chess power is too high." Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "Zheng Juzhong also took a high look at the head teacher of Baiyujing." Now that the rush talked about Zheng Juzhong, an old man who is proficient in playing chess, he smiled and asked, "Talk about a game?" The white-clothed boy rubbed his hands and said, "Does senior want to lose or to win?" Liang Shuang shook his head, "Not as good as your husband can talk." After the old man waved his sleeves, the mountains and rivers of Tonggishao appeared in the house, and the old man's eyes swam around, selecting the old and new 5 sacred mountains and Chujun Mountain, and condensing them into 160 verdant chess pieces. Ijo Jianghu was manifested into snow-white chess pieces, but only 50 pieces. The number of chess pieces was obviously far less than that of the old man. He gathered them at his feet, and the white-clothed boy grabbed a snow-white chess piece and raised his fist. "Guess first?" Liang Shuang directly twisted a verdant chess piece, leaning forward slightly, as if he had skipped the step of guessing first, placed the piece first and stopped in the air. It's like saying something to the white-clothed boy on the opposite side. "Liang Shuang, my senior, is an earlier climber and is now higher than you. Guess the first thing. Since there is no suspense, why bother to do more? The only problem now is that there is no chessboard between the two. This is Liang Shuang's elder style again. Guess the first thing. I get the advantage, but I don't take Cui Dongshan a little bit of advantage on the chessboard. At the same time, the size of the chessboard in a game can exceed the size of the vertical and horizontal 19. In addition, the distance between the vertical and horizontal lines of the chessboard is actually determined by both sides. Therefore, such a game of chess, from the pieces to the first guess to the chessboard, is full of mystery. There will be old rules and new rules, each of the first hand, fairy hand, and unreasonable hand, will be born one by one. The chess pieces are on the chessboard. If the mountains stand up on the earth, many chess principles will be like rivers and rivers. It seems to be far more longevity as immortality, than immortals like the mountains and rivers of the world, and there will be constant births and deaths on the chessboard. Both sides fell like flying. After playing 50 hands each, Cui Dongshan, who had no snow-white chess pieces, suddenly looked around and finally turned the Shindu mountain of his own sect into a verdant chess piece, gently twisted it and knocked it on the chessboard. Liang Shuang stared at the chessboard, pondered for a long time, sighed, grabbed a handful of verdant chess pieces and fell on the chessboard. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "Senior has a high profile." Liang Shuang asked, "The name of the next clan?" Cui Dongshan said, "The site was chosen as the site of Mount Shindu in Tonggishao and named Qingping Jianzong." Liang Shuang nodded and said, "Tai is near the sky, connected to the mountains and the sea. Baiyun turns around and sees nothing. The fairy is in the place where Baiyun is born, but the Qingshan is outside the mountain, but people don't care about it." Cui Dongshan smiled and nodded. "Seniors who don't swear indiscriminately are good seniors." Liang Shuang said, "The Ganoderma and the occupant Xiao Xiao in the mountain will be handled by you." Cui Dongshan got up and said goodbye. Liang Shuang stood up, stopped at the door, and glanced at the lively capital of Liang Kingdom and the sight of mountains and rivers farther away. After crossing the threshold, Cui Dongshan turned his head and smiled casually. "In the coming year, Sungama can't see it all. Hajime knows that he is a peaceful person." Liang Shuang still didn't take his gaze back, and finally said a very profound confession. Cui Dongshan smiled, and even if he heard it, his body turned into a white rainbow and rushed to the mountain shrine on the border of Liang Kingdom. The old man turned and walked towards the unremoved chess game, twisted his beard for a moment, nodded and said, "This hand, if I make a move here, I will definitely win." The woman who was parading in the corridor with lanterns came to the door in confusion. Looking at the weird chess pieces in the house, she whispered, "Master, did you lose in chess with that boy?" The old real man smiled and said, "How is it possible?" The woman glanced at the chess game, then looked at the master. The old man had to explain, "I lost the game and won the tolerance." On the steps at the entrance of the Xianxia temple, Qin Pingan bid farewell to the old man with a fist. The group of people returned to the original footing on the mountain, and the mansion lady was still hanging out here. Cui Dongshan said one thing in his heart. Qin Pingan nodded, his vision is good, and he is indeed an unpredictable outsider in the world. On the top of the mountain Jishan Fujian Jianghu, this Fujian empress, will also be called Mrs. Yunhe by some familiar mountain monks. Extremely elegant, the goddess made in the mansion, she was named the officer of the poetry, the officer of the washing ink, etc. A personal maid who was responsible for dressing up Jianghu asked softly, "Nyang, this is not an ordinary trainer." She was standing next to the Fujian empress, 2 heads shorter. Jianghu smiled and joked, "Is it all visible?" The previous group of people had a mysterious escape, and they were hundreds of miles away in a flash, without any spiritual ripples, and the weather was astonishing. Especially after the mountain shrines and temples, the landscape is hazy, and the fog looks like flowers. This means that there will be at least 1 or 2 nascent souls in this group of temporarily unidentified Guijiang dragons, and there may be 5 gods in the team. And even if she ranks among the 5 mountain monarchs of a country, without a 500 or 600 years of prosperous incense, Jin Shin would never want to rank among the ranks of Yuan. This lady of Jishan Mansion gently tapped the palm of her hand with the rolled-up 24-flower trade wind seal sheet. The safest way to do this is to immediately return to the car and go home, as if nothing happened. Today's Tongyi's How, there are too many cross rivers from other continents. Speaking of the southernmost Kashandu, there is a sword fairy Su Jun from another continent, who is responsible for picking up 2 transcontinental fairies from the Lu family of Iazhao. Especially the neighbor monk in Aquarius Island to the north, who could only crane his neck to look up at Tong Yezhou. Now that Feng Shui turns around, it is the turn of the monk Tong Yezhou to meet him a little bit shorter and lower. Many monks from other villages live in seclusion behind the scenes, whether they rely on money or whatever. In some small countries that have just been restored to the country for a few years, they have become the super kings who dominate the government, secretly supporting puppets, acting decisively and making money. We want to grab all kinds of mountain water resources, such as the one which was concluded with the Yu dynasty, the old Longqing house family of the covenant. It's just undeniable that there are so many remaining monster monks who are too late to escape back to the barren world. Without these monks from outside the sea, Tongyi's How, which is already dilapidated enough, would only even more so. The native monks alone may not be able to clean up the old mountains and rivers after one more time. Just say that Xianxia, who is the candidate of the sect, was extremely caring about searching for the mountains, and even created a wild garden, as a tourist attraction for people to enjoy the scenery, of which a large number of them have not been refined. Successful wild monsters and some monks of the lower 5 realms. The ancestor of the mountain lord of Xianxia has been in retreat for many years, so that the Yuaning realm who is in charge of money, whether it is cultivation base or the status of the mountain gate, has come to the top, and only a few years of hard work, Xianxia has a lineage of the mountain lord. The power has fallen aside. Probably this is the so-called hard-to-read sutra. When the group returned to the top of the mountain, the Fujian mountain god empress put the printed sheet in her sleeve and said with a smile, "The immortal teacher can call her by her first name. My surname is Jiang Minjing and I come from Jishan." The green shirt guest smiled gently and said, "I have seen Fujian Jiang. My name is Chao Mo and I am from Aquarius Island." Jiang Ying breathed a sigh of relief and assumed it was a familiar face. As for the chance of the immortal family over there, Jishan did not have any extravagant hopes. She was about to leave but listened to the person continuing to say, "The old man Lianghua, let me help to ask about it. If it was Jiang Fujian who was the first to board today and got this chance, how would Jishan deal with the Ganoderma and Xiaoqiu?" Jiang Ying smiled and said, "If I am lucky enough to get it, I should cherish this fate. Jishan will definitely treat each other with courtesy." Qin Pingan said, "Although the lightning tree has withered, it is deeply involved with Shenzhen. I might be able to help transplant the lightning tree in Ganoderma lucidum." Jiang Ying said, "It is best to wait for the Ganoderma lucidum to truly resuscitate, and you can leave its place of cultivation for a short time, and outsiders come to do it again. Otherwise, it will more or less hurt the vitality of the Ganoderma lucidum. Pei Qian nodded secretly upon hearing this. This mansion empress, in fact, with her words alone, even if she has passed the customs. This chance will be good luck. Master dare to truly rest assured. Qin Pingan smiled and said, I was negligent or Jiang Fujuan was more secure. Jiang Ying was puzzled. What does real person Liang mean? Is it really willing to let me bid for Jishan Mansion? Just talk about that little Chiu. If you are willing to serve as the Jishan Kiching or worship, it will definitely be a great thing. The genus of dragons in the world, among them, can be called the orthodox descendants, according to the chapter of interpreting fish according to the water descent. In fact, there are not many types such as horned horns and no horns. The little Chiu in the mountain that protects the Ganoderma lucidum is now only in the cave mansion realm. Compared with the ordinary mountain spirits, it is more difficult to reshape, but once the refining is successful and the water is successful, the possibility of transforming the dragon is very high. Whether it is the 1,000-year-old Ganoderma lucidum that can help increase the vigor of vegetation, or the little chrysanthemum with a very high background and good cultivating aptitude, it will definitely spare no effort to cultivate and support it in public or private. If Xiaoqiu really went to her own Jishan area, and waited to be elevated to one of the 5 sacred mountains, Jishan's landscape jurisdiction would have more than doubled. She would definitely take care of the walking issue. In the Shanshui officialdom this is nothing. Fake public for private benefit. With good luck, within 300 years, Jishan could have one more earth fairy water dragon. It is a blessing for both parties. Then in the dark, the first true dragon after the battle of Slashing Dragon appeared in Aquarius Island. Like a spring breeze sneaking into the night, the mountain is closed and the ban is lifted. I heard that nowadays, near the Baidi city in the Middle-earth God Island, the Dragon Gate on the side of the Yellow River Xiaodongshan has gathered a large number of Dedeo aquariums in recent years, as many as the Crucian carp who crossed the river, and they all want carps to jump into the Dragon Gate. Chen Pingan shook his head and said, Don't talk about money. Liang Zhenren left only one sentence in the end, let Jiang Fujuan just take the chance. Chen Pingan didn't bother to find any excuses. It is estimated that the Jishan Mansion will think more about it, no accident, and eventually will accept this opportunity. Jiang Ying was stunned on the spot. The true guardian of Liang country was actually willing to give up this opportunity in vain? Is it a trap? Or do you simply want to form an alliance with Jishan Mansion so as to help him find some medicine in the mountains? Qin Pingan left and just about to move, a young girl behind the car driving team flushed, mustered up courage and shouted timidly, Lord Qin Shan? The little girl's voice was soft, thin like mosquitoes and flies. A woman in palace dress frowned slightly. How can outsiders make such a mess when the palace lady is discussing business affairs with a distinguished guest? This silly child does not distinguish between occasions. All day long, I know that looking at those messy mirrors, landscapes and mansion reports, I don't even know how to save a little money, and I want to marry a good family in the future. Is it possible to only think about giving the next dowry from the palace? Qin Pingan turned his head and looked around, then smiled and asked, Is something wrong with me? The girl's ears were red in an instant and she said in a daze, Is it really the Lord Qin Shan? Jiang Ying doubted in her heart, Hu Lotus, what's the matter? The girl trembled and replied, Return to the mansion. This Master Chao Xianxian is actually the Qin Jianxian from Luapa Mountain in Aquarius Island. Now he is still the lord of the sect. Once in full view he turned away from the guest and demolished Jingyang Mountain. The Patriarch Hall, cut off the mountain to enshrine the head, the blue shirt wields the sword, and the sword light is like a rainbow. In short, it is on the side of Aquarius Island next door. Now this sword fairy is more famous than the sky. The more the girl speaks, the faster she speaks, and she pours beans in a bamboo tube without having to write drafts. With a lot of deeds, plus a lot of gossip, she has long been familiar with it and she has memorized it. Jiang Ying was stunned by the little girl. Xiao Mo said in his heart, My son, I just found out that this little girl seems to be the descendant of a moon householder. Qin Pingan has only heard of the moon palace species. Yuehu Tianjiang or something, even if you haven't seen a record on the archives of the summer palace. Xiao Mo began to explain to his son a page of the less important old almanac. In ancient times, most of these craftsmen were family members of the earth immortals. They were similar to shady seals and had the qualifications to practice, but they were generally assigned to various professions. In the land of the palace. In addition, some gods will specifically go to the earth to find suitable candidates. As for how to screen and fill in the vacancies, it involves a kind of secret magical method similar to chosen by heaven. This is the inside story that Xiao Mo had heard when making wine with the Bixiao cave master. Generally speaking, this kind of descendants of the Moon Palace will be blessed if they are the demon clan who worship the moon and refine their forms after returning to the world. The rest, in the eyes of Xiao Mo, there is nothing left to say about it. After all, there were a lot of these craftsmen back then. I just said that there were Huaxia and the three-round moon in the wild world, and there were palaces everywhere, and only the water god, one of the 5 highest, was there more than 10 summer palaces? However, if he randomly changed to another round of bright moon, Xiao Mo could not recognize the identity of the little girl, and this little girl named Huo happened to be the descendant of the moon family of that round of Huaxia Mingyue, but after 10,000 years, the blood was already extremely thin. Jianghu gave a blessing. Meeting sect master Qin, Jianghu was clumsy and impolite before. Qin Pingan hurriedly bowed his hands in return. In the end, they declined the invitation of the other party, and the group did not make a detour to visit Jishan Mansion. After Cui Dongshan's true body and Yinshin became one, he did not follow Qin Pingan and continued to return to the busy side of Shindu Mountain, both as a craftsman and as a supervisor. If you hadn't become the sect master, you would definitely have to be so stubborn and unwilling to leave. How could it be like now? The servants of the wind and dust rushed in and went back in a hurry, without delay for a moment. Before the separation, Qin Pingan casually asked about the outcome of the hand-talking in the Taoist temple, and Cui Dongshan smiled. It's hard to lose in chess. The water and the sky are the same, the river and the fish sink. Qin Pingan and his party walked along the shore. The newly opened Xianxia ferry on the top of Bailong Cave Vassal Hill, named Yandu, belongs to a Xianxia sect called Lingbai Mountain, but it was the first to take the first place near the water. This place has been reduced to a land of no masters. It has spent a lot of immortal money, sows and repairs, and continues to expand to have the scale of the ferry today. But to be precise, the next sect of Luapa Mountain, Qingping Sword sect, is now the real master of this Yandu. It's just that Cui Dongshan acted in a concealed manner, and there was no sound of wind. Even Beilongdong, who was up the mountain, did not know that Lingbai Mountain had already made this transaction with outsiders. For the time being, the small-scale Yandu will be expanded again in the future when Cui Dongshan vacates it. It will be one of the 17 ferry crossings on the route of the Fengyuan ferry. In addition to giving Lingbai Mountain 100 rain money, half of it was the ferry land deed money, and the other half was used as a deposit, because Lingbai Mountain could receive 30% of the income in the next 300 years, and 50 rain money would be taken from the 3-component account as deducted. But instead of paying dividends after deducting the money, Lingbishan can still get 15% of the account every year. So in addition to the 100 grains of rain money that has been put in the bag, you can still rely on that 15% of the income. In the next 300 years from Lingbai Mountain, you only need to lie on the account books to collect money. Otherwise, only relying on the rent of more than 60 shops and some small ferry boats to buy road money, can you earn 100 grains of rain in the year of the monkey? It is tantamount to idiotic dreams. Therefore, Lingbishan was extremely grateful to the handsome young man with a red mole on the eyebrows. As for the origin and roots, I don't want to explore it as long as the money is real. With such a large amount of fairy money that fell from the sky, Lingbishan has more ways to make money, and it can be used to make money and make money. For example, the Yuguazang in the south now founded the first mountain bank in the history of Tongisao. Not only can you store fairy money, but the gold, silver and copper money of the courts of various countries can be directly converted into fairy money. The key is not to count the premium of the fairy money. Now that the suzerain is no longer the Jiang Shangzhen, but has been replaced by the great sword immortal weighing that everyone has hoped for, then he can probably believe it. Although there are still many Shinfu sects who are still waiting suspiciously, Lingbai Mountain has sent people to Yuguazang to discuss saving money and sharing dividends. Since Qin Pingan is strolling around at his ferry, he sees everyone and everything is amiable. How he looks good. Chao Sunny said suddenly, I heard that Brother Fuyao is uneasy over there. An immortal master was searching for treasures deep in the ground. He accidentally discovered a very rich mineral vein, the material of which is unknown, but the natural deposit can be used as a spiritual energy. A new kind of fairy money, inferior to snowflake money in texture and appearance, but it is better than a huge amount. Pei Qian wondered, such a source of dragon vein wealth, the wild monster clan couldn't find it back then. The accountant Mr. Wei Wenlong once used a metaphor. The silver that circulates widely at the foot of the mountain is a series of invisible dragon veins. Qin Pingan said, I have a chance to go and see. On the way back north. Dressed in white in the white clouds. Cui Dongshan glanced back and he had no longer seen Mr. Yunshui's figure. Think of the old truth Liang Shuang's admonishment. The world has been waiting for you for a long time. Sword of Coming Chapter 894. The ferry trip was very rewarding because Pei Qian discovered from a bundle of cheaply sold books that there were a number of secret files of the palace examination papers, a veritable original copy of Weima, which summarized the palace examinations of nearly 100 imperial champions in a country. The article, each of the number 1 scholar examination paper, has brightly colored cinnabar red letters. It is the first place in the imperial censorship of the emperors of the past dynasties. In addition to the main text of the policy argument, there are also the title and name of the official reading the paper at the end. It's pale with a lot of passage but with a strong character. It's a real mistake. Chen Pinggan read through several of the oldest and most recent palace examination papers, and memorized a series of official titles. At that time, a thin old man wearing a Confucian shirt was stunned by Chen Ping's luck. After hesitating for a long time, he asked Chen Pinggan if he could resell the test papers to him. Chen Pinggan shook his head and smiled. "Old sir, forgive me for your fate." The old man smiled freely. "A gentleman does not take advantage of others. I am abrupt. Besides, I didn't have a lot of money in my pocket. I came to this mountain ferry just to relax, so I don't have the confidence to negotiate business with these mountain immortal masters." The 3 fairy coins, 1 each for Snow, Xiaoshu and Guyu, were all rewarded by the new emperor and were intended to be family heirlooms. Xiao Imo said heartily, "My son, this old gentleman just now seems to be more concerned about the recent exam papers. When I see the names of the people above, my mood fluctuates greatly." Chen Pinggan said, "The old gentleman is very official and on the battlefield. Maybe he is on the palace examination paper and saw the names of himself and his colleagues." Chen Pinggan fell in love with the sight of a pair of oolong button seals with no side seals on either side. Contentment. Insufficient knowledge. Jinshiki is not heavy and there is no signature by a famous artist, so the price is definitely cheap, but it is not only sold. As a bonus, the customer has to buy an extra piece of valuable goods. It happened that Chen Pinggan also hid a purple sandstone scoop pot with the inscription, "Hometown of the Blue Bird in the Clouds, World of the Undersea Flood Dragon." I plan to buy it and give it away. The shop is priced at 30 snowflakes. Today, Tongyisis mountain utensils are slightly touched with spiritual energy, and if you add a little bit of stories to the fairy house, the price will be terribly high, and the price will be raised and scrambled endlessly. In fact, it is expensive, but when you think of being at your own ferry, okay, just treat it as an exception. As soon as Chen Pinggan reached out to hold the purple clay pot, he was knocked on his shoulder and snatched the stone scoop pot. He turned his head and shouted with the shopkeeper in a loud voice, "Tell me a price." He didn't care about anything as the man paid for the purple clay pot. Chen Pinggan moved around and picked up a 3-color jade bracelet that symbolized happiness, longevity and longevity. The shop priced 10 snowflakes. I never thought that. A friend next to the sturdy man stretched out his hand again. Chen Pinggan gently raised his elbow, raised the other's wrist and said with a smile, "How can you buy things like this?" In fact, Chen Pinggan has found a clue. Among the group of people, there is a half-hanging Mr. Qianghu, with his sleeves in his hands, secretly turning with the pointer of a poorly crafted treasure plate, roughly judging the direction of the current wealth, and because of his own despair. The mountain has a long life, and Chen Pinggan was stained with fortune. Naturally, Mr. Qianghu was misunderstood and wanted to go wrong. In addition to the previous secret files of the palace examination papers, the other party would think of Chen Ping's choice. Buy whatever you want and you won't lose money. In fact, it is quite common to do antiques at the foot of the mountain. Chen Pinggan would definitely not let this bracelet in his hand, because he had already figured out who to give it to. The halfway Mr. Qianghu, who held the treasure plate in his hand, smiled and said, "This little brother, I advise you to cut your love. Even if you are on the mountain, you should be careful when you are out. The mountains are high and the water is deep and the wind is strong." Next to the immortal of the cave mansion realm, there was a pure martial artist with a strong figure, a saber and a long-standing official badge. If you suppress the 4 realms, you will be a great master of the mountain realm. Pei Qian gathered the sound together and explained to the master, "These people are all worshipped by the great Xia dynasty in the south, but now the dynasty is falling apart. There are 3 who are proclaimed emperor and 2 generals, 1 prince and 2 generals. An orthodox identity, a tripartite team. I started to send people out to search for money a few years ago. The methods are the same. They are all the same, but they are not much better. However, these sacrifice cards are old objects in the palace, so I can't distinguish them. Who's subordinate? Pei Qian made a sudden move, and someone dared to reach out to hold her waist. Pei Qian hit the door of the opposite side with an elbow, and the latter flew directly out of the shop. Mr. Jianghu shouted angrily, "Be careful, it's the Yaozu." The shopkeeper turned pale with fright. It was indeed Tongyi's house, which was riddled with holes. A few years ago the monsters in the wild world had been miserable. He shouted outside the door, "Hurry up and spread the word on Lingbai Mountain." In the past years in the Qingming festival, there were still paper ash flying as white butterflies in front of the grave. After receiving the whispers from the heart of Mr. Jianghu, the burly man who had snatched the stone dipper with a deep sigh, his clothes broke on the spot, his upper body was bare with 2 tattoos, he was a dragon on his shoulders and a tiger on his back. The old gentleman who was still in the shop said in a deep voice, "This kind of joke is not a joke." Pei Qian turned his head to look at the master. Qin Pingan nodded and just shot at will. So the group of worship masters from the old Daxia dynasty went together to lie outside and enjoy the blessing. Qin Pingan put away the jade bracelet into his sleeves, picked up the pair of seals and finally put 10 snowflakes on the counter, turned around and clasped his fist to the old gentleman. "Thank you." The old man smiled and said, "It's a matter of effort." After that, the old gentleman said with deep meaning, "Later the immortal master Ling Bishan came here. I can help explain 1 or 2 as much as possible, but whether it can explain clearly in the end, it still depends on the immortal masters of Ling Bishan." There is something in the old man's words, but the implication is that it is your mountaintop pedigree. If the reputation is big enough, it may be transformed into a major event, otherwise it will be very troublesome and it is extremely tricky. It is regarded as a monster monk by a royal consecrated heir trainer, not to mention that Lingbai Mountain can't afford it. Once the shop has not reached an agreement today, the 2 sides will start. Maybe they will alarm the Dafu Academy and send a gentleman or sage to come over to check their identity. Of course, if it turns out that Ling Bishan deliberately lied, the culpability is not small. A young servant next to the old man hesitated to speak, was worried that his master would cause unnecessary trouble. After Lingbai Shanzu Shirtang got the news, how dare to take it lightly, the old mountain master rushed to Yandu with a golden pill and 2 dragons inside, and he hurriedly rushed to Yandu, standing at the door of the shop as if he was approaching an enemy. After the old man reported his identity, Xiaomo smiled in his heart. The young man knows everything like a god. This is because this old master who has been rebuilt in a country is indeed one of the people on the palace examination papers, and his official title is a bit long. He is also a scholar of Wenhua Temple, a scholar of the Prince's Prefectural Ministry of Rights. He was from the cleanest civil official background. The peaches and plums were full of courts, but the old man did not follow the emperor and fled to the New World. Instead, he stayed in his hometown and homeland for many years. In the past few years, he blocked the old Daxia dynasty and others. The border invasion of neighboring countries. Now, returning home from home, just passing by here with nothing to do with a light body, intending to enjoy the scenery of the mountains, the only drawback is the shyness in the pocket. On Lingbai Mountain he obviously knew the identity of the old man, but he still didn't dare to take it lightly. If a group of monster monks were missed, Lingbai Mountain could directly use the temper of the new mountain master of Dafu Academy. The mountain has been closed for 100 years. Qin Pingan said straightforwardly, "We are from Shindu Mountain." The golden core ancestor of Lingbai Mountain asked cautiously, "Is that the fellow of Master Chui?" That lavish white boy, now behind the scenes of Yundu, visited Lingbai Mountain before and claimed to be from Qingping Peak of Shindu Mountain, and his surname was Chui. Qin Pingan smiled and nodded. The flood of water almost rushed into the Dragon King Temple, which was a bit embarrassing. The 3 ancestors of Lingbai Mountain didn't know how to speak for a while. There was no polite greetings with the 3 immortal genealogists, but Ling Bishan worried that there would be hidden dangers in today's farce, and they could fly swords to Dafu Academy. Qin Pingan took out the large pile of hall examination papers and handed them to the old man. He smiled and said, "The old gentleman is right, gentlemen don't take people's favors." The old man was extremely refreshed. After taking the hall test paper, he laughed and said, "Dare to ask the immortal master what is the price?" Qin Pingan waved his hand and said, "It's hard for a daughter to buy a few fair words." The old man smiled and nodded, "Then you won't be polite to the fairy master." After leaving the shop and walking by the ferry port, Qin Pingan glanced at Chao Sunny and asked with a smile, "What do you want to say?" Chao Sunny replied, "The student just figured it out. On the side of Jishan Fujuan, the husband will still have some temptations. That is because the husband regards it as his own business. Replaced by the immortal master of Lingbai Mountain, the husband has intentionally or unintentionally picked out his identity early, otherwise the other party may be a good person. It may also show an ugly face, or it may be false and conscientious, but be cautious, or it may be that it is better to kill by mistake and not to misplace it and just start it. In short, there are all possible possibilities. However, the husband did not act like this. Obviously, according to the agreement, he really handed over all the affairs of the next sect to the younger brother. The rebel next to the old man said, "Master, the other party has a big background, and he can let Ling Bishan go without saying a word." The old man smiled, only to say, "Hanlin flavor." For many years, he has been the official book of the Ministry of Etiquette, and has presided over the imperial examinations many times. The government and the public have said that he is a peach and plum without saying anything. In the officialdom he is said to be peach and plum everywhere. Now it is. The old man is still there, but those peaches and plums, so many young people, energetic and literary, are now really unable to speak. In a place with beautiful mountains and clear waters, passing by a temple at the foot of the mountain outside the county town, a group of people entered the temple to burn incense. When you enter the temple, don't ask for a plaque and hang the plaque in the main hall so you can feel at ease. Both pilgrims enter the temple and monks go out. Generally speaking, if the temple is closed, you don't have to go alone, you can go out to study as long as you are waiting for the summer. Whenever a wandering monk goes to a temple and goes to the main hall to worship the Buddha, you only need to look at the statue of the Vedic Bodhisattva. This temple can be a jungle in 10 directions, or a jungle for children and grandchildren that only provide 1 night and 2 meals. In this Zen temple, the Vedic Bodhisattva stands on his left hand with a single palm, and his right hand holds the magic pestle on his chest. This means that it is a Buddhist jungle of half 10 squares and half descendants. Walking monks can hang orders here for 3 days, but it is not suitable. And Dan lives permanently. These established Buddhist rules do not require the monks from the temple to remind the foreign monks. After passing the palace of heavenly kings, Qin Pingan and Chao Qingqing were outside the Daxiong Hall, each twisting 3 sticks of incense, and then putting them into the incense burner. It's just that the student holds the incense in his left hand, but the husband holds the right hand. Only after Pei Qian worshipped the incense outside the hall, he went to the hall and bowed his head. Xiao Mo didn't respect the incense, but looked at the Buddha statue enshrined in the main hall. If the world can't see the Buddha, then build a statue to see it. But this young man with a yellow hat, green shirt and green bamboo staff had seen the true Buddha. After that, the group of people passed the Daxiong Hall and climbed up the steps on the left. During this time, they passed the Medicine Master Hall, and finally returned to the mountain gate from the right side of the Tibetan scripture pavilion. Suddenly a rain began, and Qin Pingan stood in the corridor until the rain stopped. The rain was shocking, but it seemed that it would not last long. For some reason, in the heavy rain, a woman with a child knelt outside the mountain gate. In the main hall of the temple, there is a middle-aged monk kneeling on the futon, bowing his head together, tears streaming down his face. Chao Sunny wanted to take out an oil paper umbrella from the little cave sky, presented by Xiaoma, and gift it to the woman and child so that he could hold the umbrella in the rain. Qin Pingan shook his head. After the woman got up, Qin Pingan talked to Pei Qian, and Pei Qian walked under the umbrella, holding the umbrella in one hand. The woman hurriedly wiped the corners of her eyes, smiling gently, pulling the child, and thanking the kind-hearted woman together. After the winter of this year, Tongisis mountains and rivers were sloppy, and the devastated central boundary before the light snow season, there was a heavy snowfall in various places. It is freezing cold, and there are many more ice factories under the mountain. A cellar has been opened to store ice, so that it will be taken out in the summer of next year. In the territory of the old Daxia dynasty, 2 cavalry forces fought together and fought in the same room. Behind the army, a young man wearing luxurious armor is persuading an old Sevuing fairy to take a quick shot to turn the tide of the battle. In general terms, it is to deal with these warriors on the battlefield. The power is like a broken bamboo, with one enemy 10,000. As long as you make a remarkable contribution, return to the capital, and be the master of a country, there will be no objection to the court. The old immortal master stubbornly didn't say anything, but in the end he really couldn't get rid of it, so he soared through the clouds and sacrificed 2 destiny creatures, both offensive and defensive, and the brilliance flowed. The pen is not small and the technique has landed. The old monk thinks that his aura is still abundant, so he has to press the magical powers at the bottom of the box with one hand and then withdraw from the battlefield. Unexpectedly, he suffered the intensive shooting of the secret bed crossbow on the mountain in the enemy army. Breaking, the old monk was about to retreat ahead of time for that defensive mountain and water restriction. He was shot and killed on the spot by a pure martial artist who was hiding in the formation. He held a huge bow and shot it with one-handed arrows on the spot. The dozens of runes were engraved with more inscriptions. The arrow actually drew an arc in the air and walked away like a shadow. The old monk who couldn't avoid it, the whole chest was penetrated by the arrow of the thickness of the coin. A hill outside the battlefield. After seeing that scene, Pei Qian said, "It's not difficult for a cultivator to join the battlefield and take credit. But if you want to win the battlefield with your own strength, you can't do it again in the army to slaughter the soldiers at the foot of the mountain." Chao Sunny nodded. Qin Pingan was expressionless. Xiaomo was absent-minded. When it fell snow beside an ancient bridge, a few trees and old plums were not white, and the plum snow was clear. At one end of the long bridge, like an old master in academy, he brought a group of scholars to study abroad and stopped here to enjoy the scenery. In fact, he is an old monk in the Dongfu realm who is a group of disciples, talking about the illusory family affairs of the immortal, talking about the wealth of the Buddhist priest who practiced, and talking about the fairy who can be thousands of years old and childish, walking. Slightly ill, lifted and soared, immortal, in and out of the cave, heaven and blessed land, across 5 lakes and 4 seas, towns, 5 mountains and 10,000 mountains. With these words, those disciples who had just gone up the mountain for a few years, all looked bright and fascinated. The old monk stretched out his hand and gently pushed the snow on the bridge fence and said with a smile, "There are many Tao lines on the mountain, but since ancient times, there are hundreds of thousands of skills that disciples can ask for and learn. The only way is the sword immortal. In the past, only the master accepted disciples. The teacher can make it, and the sword immortal accepts disciples. The threshold is always higher than the sky. I would rather lose it than pass it lightly." A young man nodded and said, "No wonder there are so few sword immortals in the world." The side stared, "Don't interrupt my master." The old monk pushed the snow with the back of his hand and landed on the ice on the bottom of the bridge. According to ancient times, a true sword fairy with superior swordsmanship is good for the world, so he has never bothered to rely on the weapon of the gods as long as he makes a sword. Maru, there is the magic of Shenlong change, with the pure and quiet Taoist heart as the box. The empty white room is like the sun and the moon, and it can take the first level from thousands of miles. A group of disciples were fascinated by it. Well, except for the teenager who likes to tear down the platform, he couldn't help but speak again. "Uncle, last time we met your old friend on the mountain and begged for a long time, but the other party was not willing. Reported that Xianxia mansion to you. Didn't he say that there is a place under the sky called the Great Wall of Jianghu? The Dibao said that there is not a big place there, but everyone is a sword fairy, so what are the old sword immortals? The new sword immortal was taken as an apprentice?" The old monk smiled as usual, slandering in his heart. Why did the brother accept such a disciple? Is this kid busy building a house at home? He likes to tear down the platform so much. In fact, the old man himself had just learned from his friend's Fengshan Shui mansion report that there was a place called the Great Wall of Jianghu. In the distance on the opposite bank, a group of people walked towards the bridge, creaking under their feet. The old monk turned his head and looked at him. In the wind and snow, he walked in front of him in a blue shirt, holding a snowball in his hands, and 3 people followed him, seeing that they were not too old. The young man asked in a voice, "Uncle, you can quickly cast spells, open your eyes and so on. Help me see if there is a sword fairy who is looking for an apprentice in the crowd." The old cultivator smiled and said, "Ask yourself." An ancient bridge, 2 groups of people passed by. The old monk took the initiative to smile and nodded in greeting. The man in blue shirt with double knives on his waist smiled and nodded in return. After the group of people moved away, the young man said, "Uncle, I guess there are no sword immortals, and those who walk with sound will not step on the snow at all." The old monk didn't bother to pay attention to the young man, and continued to talk about the strange things on the mountain, the fairy tales and miracles. In fact, it was also a landscape story told by the old man. The mirage city of the Daquan dynasty, after it snows, is like a glazed fairyland, beautiful, and it is indistinguishable from the heavens and the earth. A group of tourists from other towns and villages handed traffic xuanhuan at the gate of the capital. Chaomo Zhengqian. As for Chao Qingqing and Xiaoma, they both used the household registration status of the Dali dynasty. When the next sect is completed, Chao Qingqing will have an extra gold and jade genealogy identity for monk Tongyi's Hao. After walking out of the city gate, Xiaomo said, My son, it's not common for women to claim the emperor in the world, right? There are quite a few women listening to politics with their curtains down. Emperor Dequan Yao Jinji. Qin Pingan nodded and said, it's rare. Thinking of something, Qin Pingan said to Chao Sunny, the chief worshipper of the Dequan dynasty is Lu Zong, the sharpener of the blessed land in your hometown. The last time I met Lu Zong here with Pei Qian, it was still the bottleneck of the golden body, but this is because the old masters deliberately did it, making it much more difficult for Lu Zong to break through the boundary than ordinary martial arts. Pei Qian pursed his lips. Chao Qingqing glanced at her. Because before I watched the mountain gate with Xiaomi Li, I heard that Xiaomi Li said that in the past, Pei Qian accompanied the good man mountain lord through the Dequan dynasty, and there was a basket of stories. Pei Qian squinted immediately and wanted to sue again? The group of people first found the home of Xianxia Inn in Mirage City, named Wuxialover. The location is very good, quiet in the middle of noisy. Birds have bird paths, snakes have snake paths, mountain ferry boats and Xianxia ferry crossings. There are often booklets dedicated to introducing the inns along the way, which are given to guests free of charge. The content is detailed and praises the sky. It is often that both sides have that not shallow incense. Love, I've brought it briefly, and it must be that the relationship between the inn and the ferry is not in place. In fact, the most famous inn in the Dequan dynasty was the Taoyuan dormitory at Tayedu. I heard that it is the first choice for female cultivators from Ezhou. Even if you put in the money, you have to stay there. Entering the gate of the inn, the first thing that hits your eyes is a high shadow wall, 3 feet high, with koi lotus flowers all like living things. Qin Pingan stopped and looked up for a moment to admire the inn that didn't even have a name in Dali capital. With this thought, business would not be so deserted. After asking for 4 rooms, Qin Pingan and the inn asked for a stack of recent Shanshui Mansion newspapers. Xiao Mo stayed at the room and sat around the table. Still only Chao Qingqing was drinking tea and the other 3 were drinking. Regarding Yuguizong, they are all things the size of sesame mung beans, occupying a lot of space, and this is the power of Ezhou Xianjia's bull ears. It used to be a north-south confrontation in which Tonggizong steadily stabilized Yuguizong, but now it is undoubtedly the dominant one. On the other hand, Tonggizong is equivalent to closing the mountain on a continent like a lone boat. The Washinshan Rouge list, which Chief Zhou personally managed, has a different statement in almost every debao. Regardless of whether he recognizes the ranking of those fairies, he will scold Jiang Shangzhen again along the way. In addition, there is the medicine of Qinghu Palace and Xiaolongqia's questioning sword. There are also many imperial courts after the restoration of the mountain, soliciting worship through the mansion newspaper, regardless of monks or martial arts, the official documents issued by the Ministry of Rights of various countries, similar to the heroes of the world. A lot of gossip about Aquarius, such as the ceremony at the Luapa Mountain at my own home, was just scribbled anyway. Xiao Mo took a copy of the newspaper and said, this Tongya Zong seems to be a bit annoying. Anyway, it's a sect and the end is so miserable? Qin Pingan smiled and said, you spare no effort to kill with a stick. In fact, it is often good and not so good, and bad is not so bad. Anyway, it is not too hard to see people's burdens, but it is not too big to watch the excitement. However, our Chief of the Week said it well. Xiao Mo nodded and said, although I haven't met Chief Zhou, Xiao Mo has already admired him. In the Luapa Mountain, the fame of Chief Zhou, up and down, inside and out, is well known. Qin Pingan endured it but couldn't hold it back. He laughed, drank a sip and said something that made Xiao Mo puzzled. Our Chief Zhou will definitely be worried after returning home. It's okay. Anyway, he likes spending money the most, so he doesn't want to be lazy if he becomes the chief worshipper. In fact, Qin Pingan still wanted to see more news about the Dequan dynasty from the debao. For example, there was a rumor in it, which was plausible and sacred. Yao Lingji lost a knife. The Ministry of Criminal Justice, the Supreme Court and the Dali Temple, the chief official of the 3 Laws Department of the Dequan Court, were so distressed that they would be worried when they met. As for the princes of the Criminal Ministry, the Imperial Court and the Dali Temple Cheng, the so-called small 3 law departments were all opened. I don't know a few meetings, but the 3 yamen have already jumped up and down, but they dare not divulge any wind. This matter, if it is big or not, is a case of theft of a treasured sort of magical treasure. If it is small, it is not small because this knife is a treasure of the past and has an unusual symbolic meaning. In the officialdom, the most troublesome thing is this kind of thing, trying to figure out Tianxin. Yao Lingzi's sword has a lot of roots. It is the treasure of the town that has been hidden in the treasure house of the Dequan dynasty for more than 200 years. It is called Famous Spring. The founding emperor of the Liu family of Daquan started at the end of the Wei dynasty and belonged to the military commander to usurp the throne to establish the country. There is a suspicion that the founding emperor was not the last emperor of the previous dynasty. The last time Qin Pingan was in this mirage city, he saw the famous spring with his own eyes. It is considered to be an imperial treasure given to the Emperor Yao Lingji by today's sun. It is indeed a magic knife of excellent appearance. The wooden scabbard, the green shark skin, and the hilt full of treasures are worthy of the term priceless. Naturally, it defeats ghosts and monsters. According to the words on the debao, it was Yao Xinji, Lord Fuyin, who seemed to have suddenly changed his sex. From a drunkard to conscientious, he personally discussed the matter with His Majesty. It was a big deal, and the 3 yamen who were turned into assistants. They all breathed a sigh of relief. Even if the sky fell, Lord Fuyin was still holding it. Moreover, Lord Fuyin had a lot of rules about the matters of worshipping monks and arresting and dispatching, which made the entire area of Jianghu inside and outside Mirage City, tight and loose inside, not disturbing the people, and orderly dispatching. This made the capital officialdom remember the same thing by appointment. The reason why this prince from Yiping County, who wears the official hat of a mansion official, was also a child of the Yao family who had joined the army when he was young, was the result of falling on the battlefield because of his severed arm and lameness. Xiaomo said, "If the sun can draw a picture of famous spring, Xiaomo can give it a try and help Yao Fuyin find out the whereabouts of the treasured sword. After finding it, he will return it to the Fuyin office. Leave a letter explaining the way and reason." Pei Qian smiled and said, "It's like a chivalrous man who does things without leaving a name." Chao Qingqing put down his mansion report and said, "Senior Shizhu, this matter does not rule out the possibility that Emperor Daquan deliberately did it. If such a thing happens when the Liu clan emperor is reigning, of course it will be better than the sky. It's big, but now it's replaced by the Yao family in charge of the country. It's already considered a treasure of the former dynasty. Losing it may not be a bad thing. Just as it was written in the debao, there are rumors circulating in Mirage City. He came, saying that there was a watchman, he saw with his own eyes, a blade of light turned into an evil dragon and fled the capital." Unlike Pei Qian, she would directly call Xiaomo or Mr. Xiaomo, and Chao Sunny still insisted on calling Xiaomo as Senior Shizhu. Xiaomo smiled and nodded, raised the wine bowl and drank it all in one go. Chao Qingqing raised his bowl and replaced wine with water. Qin Pingan said, "I will take Xiaoma to Yao Mansion immediately. Pei Qian, Chao Qingqing, you two can stroll around Mirage City at will." Last time I went to Yao Mansion, Qin Pingan and Cui Dongshan used their own merits to draw the talisman, and posted them inside and outside the house to ensure that General Yao could save his vitality and sleep soundly, and then he could wait for Qin Pingan to ask for a renewal. The elixir of life extension. But Cui Dongshan also told the Yao bluntly about 2 things at the time. Even if he really asked for the medicine on the mountain, General Yao would have a longevity, and for that medicine the Yao family had to pay for it, not to mention a god's money. It is the rule that pilgrims cannot borrow money from outsiders for the incense money used in the temple to burn incense. This is the same principle. This time Qin Pingan also brought 2 elixirs. It was from Fu Lu Yuxuan and Longhu Mountain Celestial Master Zhao Tianlai that my husband asked for 2 life-renewing medicines that were most suitable for xianxia vulgars to take. Old scholars generally don't pay attention to rich people, but in this matter there is not much lion talking. It is not this old scholar who has restored his status as a literary saint. He can't ask for more medicine, nor is it Yu Lauer and Tianshi. The mansion does not have more treasury, but the monks in the mountains pursuing longevity for a long time, it is a matter of disobedience. It is a matter of rebellion to continue life with pill. There are some taboos, but they are not too big. Oil, but there are many taboos. For one thing, the energies of human beings are not for the monks to accumulate the aura of heaven and earth, which can be replenished when they are used up, especially for those late old people who are about to die. The spirit of the whole person is like a river rushing into the sea, never returning. Therefore, many blessed people, the elderly, are actually sensitive to the life and death limit. Especially the eminent monks of Buddhism and the dragon elephant, the Taoist real people, can even accurately know the specific time. It's like being at the turn of the land and the sea, stopping for a while. This is the so-called Huiguang Fanshao. In addition, the people on the mountain are the people who live on the mountain, and the life extension is similar to the fact that the person who takes the medicine will damage the ancestral blessing of the person who takes the medicine. Therefore, the real magical effect of these 2 medicines is to refine the pill of yin and virtue. Used as medicine, it can add more than 1 year of life to General Yao, which is equivalent to a very long return to glory. And this is already the limit. Xiaomo suddenly said, "My son, if you didn't guess the wrong identity, Lord Fu Yin will come here soon." Qin Pingan still stood up and said, "After meeting him, go to Yao Mansion." At the door, I met Yao Xianji, who was no longer full of stubbles. Although this Jingshi Fu Yin looked a little tired, his eyes were as bright as a boy of the past. Walking out of the alleys together, when Qin Pingan and Yao Xianji talked about the pill, Yao Xianji, who limped, didn't even say a word of politeness to Mr. Qin. "It's a pity that you can't change your mouth and shout about brother-in-law." Yao Xianji said softly, "Mr. Qin, I have checked it out. There is no monk in the northern Jin kingdom who lived in Shiru and went to the monastery as Mr. Qin said last time." Qin Pingan nodded. "The monks who truly have the Dharma can only meet by chance." During the last reunion, Yao Xianji solved a lot of knots, and finally made up his mind not to go to the border and return to his old career on horseback. He will continue to be the Lord Yin in the capital, but Qin Pingan has to reserve a place for the next worship. The young emperor of the northern Jin dynasty advocated Buddhism. It is said that once he spent a night in a Zen temple, he was taught by a stranger in his dream, and he obtained a long-lost original of water and land rituals. At the beginning of the spring of this year, His Majesty the Emperor appeared in a water and land puja. Let the ceremonial book read the ceremonial texts, and the imperial edict water and land without hindrance plaque, so within a country water and land Buddha is very popular. Yao Xinji asked carelessly, "When will the next sect be created? Is there a specific date?" The person who is to worship must definitely participate." Qin Pingan smiled and said, "It will be the beginning of spring next year." Yao Xian looked weird. "Why is it such a day?" At the beginning of spring, the emperor led 100 officials to the outskirts to welcome the spring festival, and even his own capital Yin was responsible for the spring. Therefore, His Majesty the Emperor will definitely not be able to participate in that celebration. The last time Mr. Qin was a guest at Jinhuang Mansion, His Majesty the Emperor was stationed in Songjin Lake. It was only a few steps away, but the two sides still missed it. Qin Pingan and Yao Xianji were sitting in a carriage, and the inn was not far from Yao Mansion. Xiaomo sat beside the coachman. Yao Xianji asked tentatively, "Why not just live in my house?" Qin Pingan explained, "After delivering the pill and confirming that General Yao has taken the medicine, we will leave Beijing immediately and go to Pushan Yunkatang." Yao Xianji asked, "So anxious?" Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Next year will be established in the beginning of spring next year. Lord Fu Yin, say to yourself, am I, the Supreme Sect Master, busy?" Yao Xian's expression is complicated. No matter how busy it is, these 3 or 2 days are not bad. When I arrived at Yao Mansion, I came to the room with many talisman stickers. After Yao Xianji helped General Yao take 2 pills, Qin Pingan, who was sitting by the bed, gently picked up the old man's wrist and carefully checked the pulse condition. Finally turned his head and said softly to Yao Xianji, "Don't worry, there is no problem. Old General Yao will wake up soon. No matter how busy your kid is, you should take the time to accompany your grandpa for a walk." Yao Xianji first called out Mr. Qin, then raised that arm, clenched his fist heavily, and tapped lightly in his heart. Qin Pingan moved gently, put the old man's arm back on the quilt, and then patted the corner of the quilt before he got up and walked out the door with Yao Xianji. Xiaomo stood quietly at the door. Qin Pingan patted Yao Xianji on the shoulder. "Go ahead, don't worry about me, I am here waiting for the old general to wake up." Yao Xianji smiled and said, "I'm so busy, I haven't slept peacefully these days, I have to take a breath." In the end, Yao Xianji took Qin Pingan to eat dinner here. After hearing the housekeeper said that grandpa was awake, the 3 hurriedly put down their chopsticks and went to the next yard together. The old man leaned back against the head of the bed, in good spirits, smiled and looked at the man in the blue shirt who had crossed the threshold with his grandson at the door, and asked, "Xianji, have you informed your majesty?" Yao Xianji shook his head and said, "Not yet." Then Yao Xianji asked tentatively, "Grandpa, am going to send news to the palace?" Seeing the stinky boy with a composure look, lightly lifting his blue shirt and long coat, and slowly sitting on a chair beside the bed, the old man waved his hand at Yao Xianji and smiled, "No, I can't ask for things people who can't be scared." After that, the old man just chatted with Qin Pingan about the events of the past. As for the major events of the family, the country and the world, he said nothing. After talking for half an hour, old General Yao let Qin Pingan go, but before letting him leave Mirage City, he had to come back to the house to have a home-cooked meal, and Qin Pingan agreed. Yao Xianji accompanied Qin Pingan to the door. He wanted to return to the government office to continue to deal with a lot of official duties. The search for a knife was just an immediate matter, and the rest of the mess was gone. When the snow melts, the capital is again Xianghua. Visit the Taoist temple on a snowy night. Qin Pingan was walking in an alley. On the westernmost side of the Daquan capital, there was a small Taoist temple named Xuanhuan Temple. The ban was just lifted not long ago. His Majesty the Emperor removed a group of imperial monks who secretly guarded Taoist temples. The watcher Lu Mao, the former three princes and later King Daquan, after Guizhou continued to continue, but changed the country's surname, Lu Mao took the initiative to resign, and he was awarded the Taoist duo. This small Taoist temple in the capital he devoted himself to practice and thank guests behind closed doors. Nowadays the Taoist Longzhou only accepts 2 orphans as disciples. Lu Mao taught some Taoist mantras and immortal vomiting techniques, but the 2 children do not know the priceless treasure. Compare tired and lazy, I feel more troublesome than sweeping the courtyard. Lu Mao heard a knock on the door, got up in his cloak, opened the door, and saw the green shirt guest who had reunited with his old friend. Lu Mao suddenly had 2 big heads. The villain came to the door and looked at the posture, and came from a small Taoist temple to fight the autumn breeze again. Qin Pingan gave a sigh, glanced at Lu Mao with a face full of surprise, shaking his hands and smiling. Congratulations to the Lord, since the last goodbye in just a few days, I have successfully broken through and entered the Dragon Gate realm. It is really true. It was too unexpected, so I came here empty-handed today, forgive me? Lu Mao twitched at the corner of his mouth. It's easy to say. After hesitating for a while, Lu Mao did not dare to say the phrase, have a chance to make up, worrying that his Taoist temple would end in a dead end tonight. Going empty-handed, doesn't it just happen to return with a full load? Xiaomo had already helped close the door of Taoist temple. Qin Pingan and Lu Mao walked side by side and began to introduce the 2 student disciples around him. The disciple Pei Qian has just become a boundless martial artist. Student Chao Sunny, the last imperial examination of Dei, the Huiyuan of Beijing Chunwei, the 2nd place in the palace exam. When Lu Mao heard the words, he and the young man and woman slapped a sect, but he was puzzled in his heart. Can the 2 be compared? No matter how high the gold content of the Dali imperial examination is, the 4-year-old Beijing master Chunwei has never seen the top 3 champions. But there are only a few martial arts in the land of a continent? In my hometown now there are only 2 masters, Wuxing Wu Tan and Huang Yun. Lu Mao planned to take a group of visitors to the main room to drink tea. Qin Pingan did not agree, saying that it would not be so troublesome, so let's go to the master's study, which was quite clean. The Longmen realm master of Huanghuaguan, his eyelids trembled when he opened the study door. If you are accidentally robbed by a thief, it is because your own way of watching and guarding is unfavorable, and you can't blame others, but what's the matter with yourself? The other party is fighting open fire, forcibly grabbing, and you have to help open the door? A wing room was used by Lu Mao as a study room. The interior decoration is simple and simple. It is almost the same as the last time Qin Pingan visited here. A bookcase, a yellow bamboo pen holder from the palace and a stick for copying. The Daquan chickens of the Taoist scriptures are away from the pen, and a row of bookshelves against the wall. There are a few flowers in the corner, and a small pot of calamus is placed. The only difference, there are probably a few books missing on the bookshelf, and 2 brand new chairs in the room. Qin Pingan glanced at the pen holder. The 3 copy pens he saw last time are still there. If I remember correctly, 2 of them are sealed with Qingyu and Mingjing respectively. The rarest one is the Changfeng pen with a collection of by Air Shiji, the world's best skills, inscribed. On the table, the orderly inheritance of the Huang Tingjing with countless stamps and flowers is also placed. It is very good. At first glance, the Taoist Longzhou is an old-fashioned person. Cui Dongshan has negotiated a deal with the Daquan dynasty. The next clan will purchase a large number of government-made chicken pens, and the Wind Kite Ferry can help sell to the 2 continents north of Tonggishao. After Qin Pingan heard about the incident, he immediately helped the students and the next sect to check the omissions, saying that the official system was improper, and it was the imperial property of the palace office. At that time, everyone was dumb on Shindu Mountain. Even old immortal Jia did not speak. Lu Mao lit an oil lamp on the table. The light was dimly yellow. Fortunately, the windows were closed so that the lights did not flicker. The study is not big and it is not suitable for guests. Besides, there are only 2 chairs in the room, so Qin Pingan asked Xiaomo and the others to wait outside. After holding his hands, Qin Pingan looked at a calligraphy and painting on the wall and nodded in praise. The master's handwriting is nothing less than a finishing touch, and the shabby room will be brilliant. It turned out to be a page of scripture framed by Lu Mao in a sandalwood frame and hung on the wall. It is just a verse of Huang Tingjing with 2 writings. The 16 characters at the end are exactly what Qin Pingan helped to make up last time. Separate ways and dispersed bodies, arbitrarily transform forms, make up real people and live together in heaven and earth. After Lu Mao sat on the book table, Qin Pingan moved the only remaining chair and sat on the opposite side of the book table, raised his legs, took out a bamboo dry tobacco rod and a bag of tobacco, knocked on the tabletop and asked with a smile, "Do you mind?" Lu Mao smiled and shook his head and said, "Qin Jianxian is free. I was surprised. When did I take this bite?" Qin Pingan remembered something, put the dry tobacco rod and tobacco on the table, turned to the bookshelf and took out a few books from his sleeve. Before putting them in the bookshelf nearby, he raised his hand and shook it casually. The books borrowed here, such as Island Mathematical Scripture, Algorithm Fine Grass, and other books, after returning to the original owner, Qin Pingan smiled and said, "See clearly, I borrowed books from you earlier, a total of 6 books, and said to return them. How could it not be returned? These 6 books are all books by artists." Lu Mao is obsessed with this. He can even be regarded as a master of arithmetic. After all, the 3 princes of the Daquan dynasty in the past also served as the president behind the scenes and compiled it for the court. The 400-volume, the 12th year of Yuan Zhen de Book Guji. According to Lu Mao's statement last time, the book should not be borrowed. If you want to grab it, grab it. Everyone in the book collection under the mountain has this habit. Borrowing books is like borrowing a wife, and donating books is like giving a concubine. Lu Mao glanced at the bookshelf, endured and endured. After all, he could not resist, stood up, walked around the bookcase and quickly came to the bookshelf, intending to take out the arithmetic books one by one and put them back. The original position must be exactly the same, otherwise Lu Mao will feel awkward, saying that he is having trouble sleeping and eating, which is not an exaggeration. As soon as the book 9 chapters of numerals started, Lu Mao knew something was wrong. At a glance, sure enough, Lu Mao speeded up his actions and took out the remaining 5 books one by one. As expected, the engravings were poor, and there was no need to open them. You knew it was a private bookseller's folk version, which was 100,000 difference from the 6 palaces in his collection. Thousands of miles. Besides, for the collector, this is not a matter of high or low prices at all. Lu Mao's face was pale with anger, gritted his teeth and said nothing, just handed back a few books to Qin Ping, and Qin Pingan gently pushed away Lu Mao's hand and complained, "It's not difficult to borrow and borrow again. Besides, we both have known each other for so many years, so please take it away." Lu Mao especially insisted, "Go to your mother's Qin Jianxian. This matter there is nothing to talk about." Had it not been for the disparity between the 2 sides, Lu Mao would have started beating people. At least he would have ordered a guest on the spot. Those few beloved books are just like beautiful girls who are like flowers and jade. You can take them away by force. You have to send back some yellow-faced women and then tell me cheeky about them? Qin Pingan put those books on the table, then took out a piece of wooden handle from his sleeve, beckoned, "Last time I missed it, this time I will make it up." Before coming here, Qin Pingan, in order to find out the clues of the remarkable whereabouts, belonged to Lu Mao's favorite ordinary whisk, and Qin Pingan crushed the wooden handle inch by inch. Lu Mao did not refuse this time. Qin Pingan shook his long coat, raised his legs and began to swallow the clouds and mist. At the same time he looked around. In this study room, Qin Pingan finally found out a secret letter that was very mysterious, except for those of Fei Ran and Lu Mao. The calculation failed, and the extra reward was to get a personal book seal from Wen Hai's careful collection. After Qin Pingan passed it to Cui Dongshan, he finally took it to the Zhongtu Confucian Temple. And as a price for reading the letter, that was the swordsman Pei Min, who was disguised as the old housekeeper of Shen Guogong's mansion and asked about the sword. At that time there was an umbrella handle. In the rainy night, from the Tiangong temple outside the capital, like a flying sword, he came to Huanghuan and ran into Qin. Piece of the abdomen. One of Howren's 3 must-dose swordsman Pei Min. He was once by Yes half-swordsmanship master and one of the 2 preachers of Lu Tai. Lu Mao looked at the guy who smoked a dry cigarette and asked, "When will Qin Jianxian come to Mirage City next time? Don't ask what you want in the visit tonight." Qin Pingan was choked by this question, coughing endlessly. He was so obsessed with the subject and treated people with sincerity. In fact, Lu Mao has entered the Dragon Gate realm, and if he sees his posture he has to go straight to Jiedan. It is an expression of his attitude with the Yao family of Daquan. Lu Mao of Daquan has no royal family. Lu Mao, only a Longzhou Taoist, so he should be a Taoist with peace of mind. Watching the Lord of the Gods. Qin Pingan asked, which Shen Guigong? Lu Mao shook his head and said, I haven't seen it in a long time, believe it or not. Qin Pingan leaned forward and took out a pen from the bamboo yellow pen holder. Lu Mao took a deep breath. Fortunately, the guy turned the barrel of the pen and examined it carefully, then quickly put it back into the pen holder. Qin Pingan said that he didn't need to see off the guests. He put away the cigarette stick, waved his sleeve to dissipate the smoke, got up and walked to the door, suddenly took out a book from his sleeve and threw it to Lu Mao. Return you. It is the lately coming astronomical star chart. Different from those books on arithmetic, this astronomical star atlas is a banned book by the court. Even officials cannot hide it privately, otherwise it is treason, and the crime is more serious than the private possession of armor crossbows. Lu Mao stretched out his hand to take the book, and he was unexpectedly happy that this Qin Jianxian didn't turn it off. Put it in the bookshelf and return the object to its original position. Lu Mao temporarily took it out, then turned over the pages of the book, only to find that there were two side-by-side seals on the title page, and the same was true for the last page of the book. The same seal has two prints side by side. Think infinitely, think back and forth. Contented, insufficient knowledge. Lu Mao took the book, walked to the window, opened the window and looked back at the lights on the table. The moon shines on a day of snow, the lights are smaller than fireflies, and the words on the lanterns are more clear. Returning to the Wangxing flower house, Pei Qian went back to his house to rest, but Chao Sunny left the Xinjia Inn alone to enjoy the snow. Qin Pingan took out the two booklets of Li Huai, took out the pen and ink, compared the problems on the booklets, analyzed and re-annotated them one by one. Xiao Mo was flipping through a novel with a tortuous plot and read it with gusto. Qin Pingan suddenly put away the booklet and said, Xiao Mo, help protect the road for a while. Xiao Mo nodded silently, walked out of the house, closed the door gently and stood in the corridor. Qin Pingan sacrificed a caged bird, then revolved the 5 elements of his life, and at the same time mobilized the aura of the 5 Qi palaces, and began to contemplate a landscape. It was actually 1,000 miles of mountains and rivers on the border of Tuoyue Mountain. During the confrontation with the culprit in the Tuoyue Mountain realm, Qin Pingan actually had a silent wandering. First of all, I tried to learn more about the site of the ascending platform, and I was worried about being careful or brilliant, hiding a backhand, and finally I chose the place in the target of the sword by the way. It's just that the first disciple of the great ancestor of Tuoyue Mountain, and soon took the initiative to ask for a fight and a question of the sword. At this moment, within the caged bird, Qin Pingan floated in the air, independent of the world. First, Tuoyue Mountain, then the nearby mountains and rivers and flowers and trees. Qin Pingan manifests the avenue with the heart and recreates the world. It's just that when Qin Pingan condensed his mind like a pedestrian stopping at a certain place, looking at a flower between the day and the earth, when he wanted to let the flower grow on its own, in an instant, a world of minds fell apart like porcelain. As a result, there are many loopholes in a small world of birds in a cage. Xiao Mo reminded softly, My son, can you narrow the boundary and reduce the number of things at the same time? Qin Pingan nodded. Reimagine the world. It is no longer Tuoyue Mountain, but the pond behind the bamboo building. Finally, in a pool of clear water, there is a purple lotus seed, which starts to grow slowly, the branches and leaves are watered, and the lotus leaves are covered with water and buds. When it was finally released, when the first lotus flower was finally blooming, Qin Pingan put away his mind in an instant, and took the initiative to dispel the vision. Putting away a handful of caged finches, Qin Pingan walked to the window, opened the window and the snow fell. Qin Pingan took out 2 bamboo slips from his sleeves, engraved on them were 2 sentences from Tao's 3,000 words, and I am not a body, what is my trouble? This sentence is easy to understand, but on the other bamboo slip, it is not only that Qin Pingan has not been able to understand the deep meaning of the world, sending the world and supporting the world, but even within the Taoist gates of the vast world, there are different Dharma and Taoist veins. There will be all kinds of disagreements on annotations, and it is estimated that no one dares to say that their opinions must be correct, and they can only be regarded as a little understanding. It's just that when Qin Pingan was temporarily borrowing the 14 realms with Lu Qin, especially the last time he met the Tao boy who rode a bull, he deliberately avoided this. Silently put away 2 bamboo slips that had been treasured for many years, turned his head and said, Xiao Mo, you can come in. After Xiao Mo entered the house, he didn't ask anything, just continued to read the Zhiguai novel. No wonder everyone is willing to be a scholar, because you can often lose your way and then you will most likely see a big mansion. After that, you will either meet a fairy or a ghost in the mountains, have a cup of tea and sing a few poems. In the palace of the capital, there was a woman with light makeup, with an extremely beautiful appearance. She threw the folds in her hands, rubbed her eyebrows, closed her eyes and rested for a while, then picked up the folds handed over by the Ministry of Households again. After reading all the folds, it was late at night. His Majesty the Emperor raised his head and looked into the distance, startled. Buried River Water Mansion Bo Palace. By the river, the goddess of water Lu Ro was sitting on a chair. She held the fishing rod in one hand and yawned. After sitting for a long time, no fish was hooked and the fish basket was empty. Unexpectedly, a stupid fish came to the shore and swam slowly, so angry that the goddess of water lost her fishing rod, bent down and picked up a stone on the shore, raised her arms high, pointed her fingers at the fish and glared. Looking at each other, "You are so deceiving." With a stomped foot, the water god empress threw the stone and waved her big hand. "Forget it, the two countries will not be slashed when fighting each other." Lu Ro continued to retrieve the fishing rod, sat on the chair, squatted on the chair and stood on the chair, but no matter what, no fish took the bait. She had to lose the bamboo pole, throw it far into the river water and kick the empty fish crate away. After that, when she returned to the house, she told people that the fish was too big and she broke the fishing rod. Too many dragged away the fish basket. The water god empress swaggered back to Bo Palace. Not far away, she suddenly raised her head, and several figures fell at the door of the house. "Ah, Mr. Chin is here as a guest. It's a pity now I'm treating guests at home, and there is no more water, flour, wine and eel noodles." Every time the Shui mansion was discussing matters recently, the Shui god empress was sitting in a dreadful manner at first, and then she couldn't help but glanced at one place, occasionally wiping her mouth secretly. Without eel noodles, black fish would be fine. There was a Shuifu official who was born as a fish spirit. He was really frightened. He only felt that his days were like years. He had to meet the god of water in private, and bit his head to speak up. The rough idea was that the god of water would resign if you were like this. Fortunately, after the discussion, the goddess of water didn't look at it from beginning to end. Lu Ro curiously asked, "Mr. Chin, didn't you say you can bring your wife to Bo Palace?" Chin Pingan smiled and said, "We can only wait for the next time." When they arrived in the lobby, Lu Ro waved her hand, calling for Chef Lu to start work. Pei Chin immediately said, "My share, don't be spicy." Chin Pingan seconded. Chao Sunny said, "I can eat a little spicy." Xiao Amo smiled and said, "You can do whatever you want." Lu Ro shouted, "A few more jars off, not splash wine." She laughed, "The officials in Mirage City are more annoying than the other. The trust relationship has been entrusted to my sister and brother-in-law. They have to buy water and flour wine from me, and the 100 jars of wine in the wine cellar. I have only made wine for a few years, and I can't afford the name of sprinkled wine. I don't make money and smash the signs. I'm just a fool to do it. I'm so wise to take the new brewing water and use it as a not sprinkled wine. The name, the wine is also given away and the favor is also earned." Seeing that the crows are silent and no one is present, the goddess of water crowed again to herself. Pei Qian joined in and said, "This is the Shanren's own clever plan mentioned in the book." Lu Ro patted the table. "Yes, Xiao Pei Qian can speak, that's how it is." A bowl of bowls of noodles are served, and both Qin Pingan and Pei Qian are used to it. Both the master and the apprentice smiled at each other. Xiao Imo who said random, half a pot of noodles, half a pot of red pepper. Chao Qingqing is slightly better, most of the pots of noodles and a small pot of chili peppers. Chen Pingan rolled up a chopsticks noodles, not forgetting to turn around to remind the two of them. "Chili is wine, the more you drink." Xiaoma Chao Qingqing, if you don't have enough noodles, you don't need to be polite with the goddess of water. Xiao Mo was silent for a moment, then nodded, "You won't be polite." Chao Qingqing slowly turned his head and looked at Pei Qian. Someone's book of landscape travels clearly stated that the eel noodles of Bo Palace Waterhouse is a must, and the taste is superb. There is also a 4-character comment, "Prefer not to be spicy." Chao Qingqing didn't need to use his chopsticks at this moment, the spiciness rushing over his face made him choke. Old God Chen Pingan is here, drinking and eating noodles. I stayed in Mirage City for 2 more days. During this period I also accompanied General Yao to the Xiaoping Peak outside the city, climbed the mountain and stayed at the Peak Inn, and watched the sunrise together. The first time the two sides were separated at the foot of Xiaoping Peak, this time it was still, then there will be another reunion. Because he couldn't see the emperor's business, Qin Pingan had to ask Yao Xianji to help him talk. Lu Ro heard that Luapa Mountain is about to set up the next sect. She said that she would definitely be there before the beginning of spring. When the time comes to meet in Xindu Mountain, she will definitely bring Chef Lu with her. Qin Pingan kept the green-clothed boys in his water mansion and kept them in the Bio Palace. Lu Ro was not hypocritical, and the little guys would just enjoy themselves in the future. After Qin Pingan and his party left, Chef Lu said, "Mother, Nyang, why don't you tell the little master about the college?" The goddess of her own water has discussed with the emperor, and plans to build a semi-government and semi-private academy on the bank of the bank, and only teaches the knowledge of the master Wenxing. As for the money, it was borrowed by the Bio Palace and the court. Lu Rao's arms crossed her chest and she smiled, "You know eel noodles. When I turn around, I attended the next celebration and asked for a guest. As long as the matter is finalized, I will speak again. Master Qin will pay it back. I am ashamed to refuse to come to the academy to give lectures." After Qin Pingan and his party left Bio Palace, they went straight to Pushen Yunkatang. In Daquan Mirage City today, His Majesty the Emperor was wearing a snow-white fox fur. After seeing the snow scene, she returned to the imperial study room. An enshrined court maid sent a newspaper of Shanshui from the Shenzhou Shanhaizong of Zhongtu. It is said that it was the first Shanshangi newspaper to name a certain name by surname. The content of the Dibao is shocking to the world. In fact, there is no deliberate rendering, it is just plain text just because the series of things that the person has done is really incredible. A foreigner from the Great Wall of Sword Qi, after Xiao Yan rebelled, succeeded as a hermit, and was responsible for sitting in the Summer Palace. He also led a dozen sword immortals to sit in the Spring Banner House on the Downfall Mountain. Especially the self-question and self-answer at the end of the Dibao, even more so that the viewers must be swayed. There is no such thing as Qin Qingdu in the world who can open up the mountain with the sword. The Great Wall of Jianxi, the latest engraver, Qin Pingan, the last hermit. The woman read the Dibao twice and quietly stretched out a finger and gently rubbed the 3 characters on the paper. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.